Absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock, yes it is, on Saturday the 29th of January. I couldn't believe it either. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
Yeah, we're live across the whole of the UK on your TV and on your radio. Good morning if you're in your car this morning. So whether you're watching or listening to us in Carlisle, or maybe you're in Robin Hood's Bay, or maybe you're watching us on YouTube in Newcastle, under Lyme or upon Tyne, either which one. One in England and one in County Down, of course. Now, you can take us with you out and about this morning. So this is what we've got coming up.
The Metropolitan Police appear to clip Sue Gray's wings, with her report on parties at Downing Street expected imminently. But will it be a Whitehall whitewash? And the Prime Minister's announced he will call Vladimir Putin and visit the region in the latest bid to quell escalating tensions between Russia and NATO over Ukraine. Also coming up, highway code changes come into effect today. Do you know about them? Changes include having cyclists cycle in the middle of some roads and new fines for changing a song on your phone while you're driving. Well, you can join any of our discussions by emailing us this morning, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or just send us a tweet at GBNews. I am not convinced by this highway code. No. I mean, things like not changing a song on your phone, I get, you shouldn't be touching your phone. Yeah. But this whole cyclist in the middle of the lane... I don't understand that. It's just going to cause tailbacks, isn't it? Yes, it is, because it's impossible to get past cyclists sometimes. And although you might say, well, they have a right to be in the road, it does literally cause those terrible tailbacks. And you're going along at like 10 miles an hour and getting frustrated, and that's not good for motorists either. It's not, and they're also saying, which I think is sensible, but they're saying you've got to be at least 5 feet from a cyclist when you overtake them, which is fine if they're on the side of the road. If they're in the middle of the road, how are you going to cope? You can't do it. I don't quite understand it. No. But one thing is for sure, it's bound to set cyclists against motorists and even against pedestrians at the moment, because everybody thinks that they're the most important when they are behind a wheel or on a bike or even walking along the road. You have rights, don't you? Or do you? Comparative rights, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I'm not anti-cyclist. I mean, my dad and my brother are actually very big cyclists. They're always out and about. So... you know, cyclists have got a right to be there, but you've got to make it work together, not pit one against the other. I've got one of those new bikes that's slightly powered. You know, you can switch on the power. Slightly powered. Well, you need it where I am because it's very hilly. But I'm too scared to take it out now. I thought it would be wonderful. It'd be so good for my fitness, and I live in a village anyway. I should be biking rather than taking the car out. And actually, I'm too scared to use it. I just hate the traffic. When were you last on it? A long time ago. It's there in my garden, and it looks lovely. Nice. The bike, yeah. Looks nice. Are you a snob, by the way, when it comes to anything? Ooh, what sort of thing? Well, there's a new survey out, we'll touch on it later, sort of saying Brits can be really snobbish about sort of going out in your pyjamas to the supermarket, or maybe drinking instant coffee instead of real coffee.
I should say this, I've got a corner shop very near me, and I have been seen out in my slippers. Do you think, I mean, why? It's only a couple of yards down the road. What's the point of changing your shoes? I actually can be seen in my slippers sometimes.
Yeah, I went to Sainsbury's in my slippers.
No.
But I'd forgotten I'd got them on until I got there.
Oh, I see. But I know people get very snobby about parents who take their kids to school in their pyjamas.
Yeah.
If you're not going to leave the car.
I sort of think, I don't know that it's snobbish, I just sort of think, should you really be doing it?
Well,
really? Is it, what sort of example does it set?
Well, it's not a sin, is it? No. You don't call them pyjamas anymore. Anyway, you call them leisure wear.
Leisure wear?
And then you can get away with it.
Oh, right. Yeah. Is that what it is?
It's leisure wear, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
An old colleague of mine did take her kids to school in a leopard skin onesie once.
You going to tell us who?
Not on air.
Shame.
But there you go.
But yeah, I think we are all snobs to a certain extent, but we are snobbish about different things. If you're snobbish about anything like that, even the colour you paint your walls or the sort of wallpaper you have. Oh, here we go again, 800 quid a roll in Downing Street. It just gets my goat, that.
Yeah.
That anyone thinks it's reasonable to pay 800 quid for a roll of wallpaper.
A lot of it's keeping up with the Joneses, isn't it? Which I don't agree with. Live your own life, but just, put clothes on if you're going to leave the house.
Leisure wear.
Yeah. Anyway, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Let's talk politics, should we? You mentioned Westminster.
Yeah.
Sue Gray, that civil servant, is expected to deliver her Partygate report to the Prime Minister before the police inquiry concludes. No precise date has been given, but it's said he will get it shortly.
Yes. Well, the Metropolitan Police have asked now, apparently, that the report be censored in parts so that there is only minimal reference made to the events that they're looking into to avoid prejudice into our investigation. So what's the point of having a report into Partygate that isn't allowed to mention the parties?
That's very strange. Let's talk to former Lib Dem MP Lembit Opik, who's here. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
Look, from the outside perspective then, I mean, party politics aside, if you can, what on earth do you make of this?
This is party politics.
Oh, yeah.
The reality is this is a ridiculous situation. It's damaging the reputation of the Met and the Prime Minister and the Conservative Party all at once. Why? Because the Court of Public Opinion has already made a decision here. People couldn't go to their own parents' funerals. And now suddenly we've got this technicality where, for reasons I absolutely don't understand, Cressida Dick is saying, or seems to be saying, hold off here. Unless she's expecting a jury trial, this doesn't make any sense at all.
There is an indication, is there? At least you could potentially read into it that perhaps there's something more that we don't know about, and therefore they have to be very careful in keeping, prejudicing any inquiry.
But what's strange about this, that would actually suggest that what Sue Gray's found out is so incendiary that the Prime Minister's going to have to go. But let's just look at this. I'm not a lawyer, but let's look at this objectively. Unless there's a jury trial, how can this prejudice the investigation? Unless Cressida Dick thinks that the police will be influenced by Sue Gray's report. When it comes down to it, if we didn't have such a pathetic opposition leader in the form of Keir Starmer, whether you like him or not, if Blair was in charge now, Boris would have had to resign already. So it looks really bad. It's damaging to the credibility of the police, and it doesn't help Boris at all.
It's all a bit convenient, though, isn't it? I mean, Sue Gray is compiling her report and sharing her evidence or whatever with the Met. Did she honestly think the Met wouldn't want to, at some point, launch their own investigation? Then you've got the Met, who rather conveniently are now saying, yes, you can release the report, but it's got to be so heavily redacted it's not going to be worth reading. It just seems a bit convenient, except you can't think in whose interests it would be, other than Boris Johnson's.
It's convenient if you look at bubbles. The bubble of Downing Street, the bubble of Westminster. You go out there and you talk to people in Newcastle, the Red Wall and everywhere else. People are just so angry about this. I, by the way, haven't got a party political motivation. I'm not involved now. But it's actually kind of embarrassing to think that anyone in those official channels thinks this is good for the country or will save Boris Johnson. I've said in this very studio many times, now Boris is a dead man walking. I lost my seat by accident in 2010, so I know what it feels like. And what Boris has done is far worse than any anything I ever did.
And yet, if you listen to what a lot of people are saying, and the people who get in touch with us, I mean, there's a lot of people say, oh, come on, there's a lot of serious stuff going on. This is a drink with work colleagues. Let him get on with the job.
Once again, you're right. But you need to look outside Westminster. We're like 4 miles from Westminster here. You need to go 10, 15, 30 miles out. You need to go into the houses of people who've lost loved ones because of COVID. And they're saying, wait a minute, I couldn't even hug my mother before she died. And now this has happened. And then there's another technical side to this. The crucial, central question is, did Boris Johnson lie to Parliament? Now, that may seem a bit academic, but if he does prove to have been to have misled Parliament, he himself said that he's subject to the ministry code, and he was, whether he admitted it or not. And so if it can be shown that reasonably...
On the other hand, do we want to lose a leader now? We've got Ukraine happening, we've got the cost of living crisis, we've got important campaigns to maybe try and get Boris Johnson to change his mind on, like, tax on VAT on...
Fuel.
On fuel bills, that's right, thank you. And all those other things that really do matter now, rather than looking back 2 years. I mean, is it the time to lose a leader, especially when nobody seems to be able to think of anyone who can take his place, and Keir Starmer is not exactly doing very well in the polls when he should be?
Well, Starmer's not going to be the next Prime Minister because it'll come from the Conservative Party, and Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak are clearly, maybe Penny Mordaunt, they're kind of lining themselves up for that. But none of that matters, because Boris doesn't seem to have the moral authority to govern anymore. No one can possibly be prosecuted for any breach of COVID rules now, because they'll say, well, look at the Prime Minister. You know, his mates were taking booze into Downing Street in a suitcase. But the other aspect of this is, I think, it's the resentment that people feel, because it looks like one rule for one rule for the other. The Tories used to be known as a nasty party, and they're heading back into that situation.
But we've been talking about this for so many weeks now. Do you not sense, you say that people are angry, but do you not sense that people are also absolutely fed up with talking about stupid parties at Downing Street?
Yes, you're absolutely right. And that's, once again, when we get back to the bubble point. Most of the country probably doesn't feel this is the most important thing in the world. But Boris made his bed, he's got a lie in it now, because he's the one who said, I will legislate to stop you from doing these sort of things, and then he does them himself. It's an Al Capone situation. He can be done on a technicality, but he's going to have to go. And once again, I'm not making this in a party political position. I know Boris. I like him as a person, but he's got no moral authority to govern anymore. It's tragic in a way. He could have done so much better, but he's made this happen. And Cressida Dick looks like she's in collusion with him. She may not intend to look like that, but the public are just fed up with it. And you're right, it's a small point, but it's got huge consequences. We could have a war in Ukraine, and we're talking about parties. And actually, it's entirely because of the way he's handled it.
And we also need to talk about the cost of living. You mentioned it with the fuel bills. I mean, there's now this big call from a lot of Tories as well, a lot of backbench Tories saying we need to lose this hike in national insurance, which is heading our way in just a couple of months. There's obviously resistance from the Chancellor at the moment. I mean, this is a real issue that is going to affect an awful lot of people when their purses are already really squeezed.
Controversial, spoiler alert, controversial comment from me coming up. If you just stop this insane obsession with the climate emergency, maybe we don't want to go down that path, but if you stop that, then we can actually save far more, for example, in energy bills by having normal energy instead of extremely expensive so-called renewable energy. Some people watching will think that we have to take urgent action, but let's recognise that Boris Johnson has done something that nobody really voted for. It wasn't in their manifesto to make our energy prices more. The cost of energy, because of the environmental agenda, is far greater than the amount of money they'll raise, for example, through national insurance hikes.
Can I be equally controversial simply by asking you, is this all down to Carrie Johnson?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, right, the problem here is, I don't think Boris Johnson's showing that he's got a narrative. Now, Jeremy Corbyn, whether you liked him or not, he had a narrative. Tony Blair had a narrative. But Boris doesn't seem to have a narrative. No one voted the Green Party into government. And I'll say this to any Conservative activists listening. They're not going to win any votes by being Green, but the prices go up because of the Green agenda. Now, as I say, I just don't think that human beings are wrecking the environment. If you really want to save money, though, that's where to find it. And let's not pretend this is a hugely expensive agenda. It'll cost this country trillions. You don't have to put NI up. You just have to have a more rational attitude towards energy in this case.
Oh, rational. I think a lot of people say so it wouldn't win you any votes to go green. Well, yeah, it would. I mean, certainly with the younger population. I mean, you've got to look to the future and the younger voters as they come through. They're passionate about the green agenda.
Yeah, we're going to go into the education question. I think that science isn't backing up what we're doing here. The question, therefore, and I have a view on this, will someone vote Conservative because the Conservatives, maybe through Carrie Johnson's influence on the Prime Minister, because the Conservatives are talking about the green agenda? I really don't think so. I've been involved in politics for 35 years now, 40 years probably, and I don't see that swing going that way. Once again, it's not central to the Prime Minister's future, but it is central to the cost of living in this country.
Have you thought, seriously, I mean, it's been really, really cold recently, and we're just due a storm, aren't we? Have you seriously thought about switching your heating off when you would normally have it on at the moment?
I was in Athens last week for a meeting. It snowed there. That's weather. It's not climate, it's weather. My judgment is that we can always have records reported on television because there's always going to be a record being broken somewhere in the world.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of your heating bills. You know, thinking it's going to hit hard every household. I don't want to see my heating bill doubled, which is what they're saying at the moment. Have you not thought about that? I've actually turned my heating off and put on a jumper where I wouldn't normally.
And you can, but vulnerable people are faced with this dilemma, paying the extra or getting cold. The real danger is that people will die because they keep the heating down. It's not because they'll freeze to death, but it'll make them ill.
But that's what this is an issue that's going to hit every one of us. Yeah. Some obviously far worse than others, and it's something that worries us all.
You're absolutely right. And really, I mean, you're talking about getting back to real politics. This is real politics. These are people in their homes who have to make a judgment about the food they eat or the temperature that they live in. And it's a tragic situation because nobody's really talking about it because everything else is being obscured with where we started, which is Partygate. Yeah. Parties don't matter, but temperatures do.
OK. Lembit, good to talk to you this morning. I mean, and do let us know what you're doing with the heating. I mean, you're really starting to plan ahead. I haven't changed it at the minute, to be fair.
I turned it off and it got really cold. Really, really cold.
No, I've left it on at the minute. But then again, I'm in a fortunate position. You know, I make decent money. I'm in a really fortunate position.
But even if you do, I think if your energy bills are going to double, everybody needs to think about it. Yeah. And maybe government needs to do something about it. Let us know what you think they should do. Or have you turned your heating down where you wouldn't normally? GBViews at gbnews.uk.
It is 16 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines then today. And the Prime Minister is set to visit Ukraine, or the region at least, in the coming days and speak to President Putin on the phone. Boris Johnson says he's determined to accelerate diplomatic efforts to avoid a conflict with Russia. He's also considering new military deployments and bolstering NATO defences in the region.
2 people have been arrested following a stabbing of a teenage boy in Norwich yesterday evening. The teen was pronounced dead at the scene. Police say a man in his 40s and a woman in her 30s were arrested shortly after in connection with that incident.
A major overhaul of the highway code comes into force today, with concerns that millions of us are unaware of the changes. The new rules aim to boost protection for cyclists and pedestrians.
And nearly a quarter of older people say they'll be forced to choose between heating their home or buying food if bills continue to rise. That's according to research by Age UK. They also reveal more than half of over 65 say they'll have to heat their homes less as inflation and the cost of living rises.
A study has found lung abnormalities in long COVID patients who have breathlessness. Research from Oxford University has identified areas of damage in sufferers' lungs by using a special gas. Doctors are hoping to find better treatments for the illness by better understanding the mechanisms driving the symptoms.
And we were talking about cold weather. Well, Storm Malik is set to batter Britain with winds of up to 80 miles an hour expected in some areas. Yellow weather warnings are in place across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, with the Met Office warning that storm damage could be caused to homes, power lines and transport. Don't like the sound of that. Really
concerned about that heating issue and the cost of living issue, and especially for the, I know you probably have a slightly older demographic watching at this time of day. I mean, just let us know if you can cope, how you're planning to cope, what you're doing now, because we just don't know quite how much those bills are going to go up by. They're talking in the papers today of £2,000.
Yes, they are. They're talking about you really ought to be thinking of your energy bills doubling, which is terrifying, actually, to some people who can't afford it already.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying to most people, actually, because it is one heck of a big chunk out of your income, if you're lucky enough to have one.
And if you're if you're on an energy meter as well, where you have to get the top-up cards and all the rest of it, I mean, then you're going to pop to the shop twice as often to get those topped up with a £5. I mean, you're just going to run out of money, aren't you?
Well, literally so.
Literally.
Yeah. And so that's what I
Crazy.
mean about that. While Partygate is important, clearly, especially if you suffered very badly during COVID, Partygate is important, but it was then, and we've got to deal with the now as well, and we need a government that can do that, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely, or an opposition that can deal with that and push on that.
But the opposition isn't doing as well as it probably should at the moment.
No, you think
could argue they should be points ahead, many points. They were 11 about 10 days ago, weren't they?
Yeah, down to about 6 now, unless you're in London, where they're 32 points ahead.
Wow, is that right?
Apparently.
What a difference.
But is that because the focus is on Sadiq Khan rather than Keir Starmer? I don't know. Let us know what you think. Highway code, this is going to get you goat, a lot of you, I think. It's changing from today. There are 8 new rules coming into effect, and the new guidance will affect all road users, including pedestrians, mobility scooter users, cyclists, motorcyclists, as well as vehicle drivers and horse riders.
Gosh, the rules will attempt to offer more protection to pedestrians and cyclists, thousands of whom are killed or seriously injured on Britain's roads every year. Our London reporter Alice Porter has more on what the new rules mean for you.
Every year, thousands of pedestrians or cyclists are killed or seriously injured on Britain's roads. So part of these changes to the Highway Code is putting an emphasis on those driving bigger vehicles to have more responsibility to those who are more vulnerable on the roads, such as pedestrians or cyclists. So what does that mean for motorists? Well, going forward, there are 3 things you need to know from today. There's now a priority for pedestrians at crossings. So in drivers and also cyclists, when you reach a junction, that you need to give way to any pedestrian that wants to cross the road. So that's number 1. Number 2, there's now priority for cyclists when cars are turning. So for example, if I was in the car and I reached a junction and there was a cyclist next to me and I wanted to turn left or right and the cyclist wanted to go straight on, I would need to wait for them to go past. So that's number 2. And finally, motorists are going to be encouraged to do the Dutch reach, which may sound a bit strange, but bear with me. When I'm in the car and I want to get out of it, the temptation is to use my right hand to open the door and get out. But the problem is, so often motorists don't look to see whether a cyclist is coming past, and it can be incredibly dangerous. The Dutch reach encourages people to use their hand on the opposite side of the car that they're on. So in this case, my left hand is the opposite hand. If I open the door with my left hand, it forces me to turn my body and open the door and look up and out to see if there are any cyclists going past. And that seemed to be a lot safer for cyclists.
We're going to be talking to Alice live a little bit later on. And whereas there are some good suggestions in there, I mean, things like saying, you've got to open the door with your opposite hand. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Who's going to do that?
It's not really easy, actually.
No.
No.
It's no good if you've got frozen shoulder, I'll tell you that.
We'll go into it in more detail later, but this business about telling lone cyclists on their own to actually take the middle of the road.
That's the key one, I think.
Which will annoy a lot of motorists, and we don't need the antagonism that already exists between cyclists and motorists.
No.
People change, don't they? They often motor during the week, going in and out of work, and then they become cyclists at weekend, and they very often they change character completely.
Because we are absolute hypocrites. This is the thing. We are hypocrites with stuff like that.
Yeah, we are. And some people are weird when they get behind a wheel. They go a bit power mad.
Yeah.
Controversy.
Yes.
So,
Anyway, less about you, Anne. Don't mean it, really. It is 6:23. Stay with us here on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We've got the papers heading your way after a look at the weather.
Hello, good morning. Some very stormy weather across northern parts of the country this morning. Some very windy weather to come through the day today. An area of rain pushing southwards, but it will turn a little bit brighter later on. Now, we've got this cold front, some very tightly packed isobars, and it's this that's bringing some very strong winds across northern parts of the UK through the day on Saturday. Stay tuned to the latest forecast. Through this morning, we'll have widely gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps 70, possibly 80 miles an hour. The Met Office have issued an amber wind warning for northeastern parts of Scotland, where we could see some really damaging weather through the course of the day today. Now, skies will brighten through the day as this cold front slides southwards. Some sunny spells and a few showers feeding through, but very blustery throughout the afternoon, so certainly not feeling like 10 to 12 degrees on the thermometer. Even further south, it will be milder, but there will be more of a breeze than we've been used to of late. Now, the worst of the winds will continue at first through Saturday evening before easing away. And then we have a ridge of high pressure building in. So what that means is the skies will clear. We'll see those winds easing right down, and that'll allow temperatures to take a bit of a tumble. So a cold start to the day on Saturday, quite a widespread frost, some pockets of ice out there as well. Temperatures in our rural spots will dip close to, if not a little bit below freezing. But a really different start to the day on Sunday. Plenty of sunshine out there first thing. Sunshine getting to work on that frost. But through the day, we will see the skies turn hazier across the north and west as that cloud starts to filter in. So a fine day for much of England and Wales, but a much wetter and windier picture for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland. The risk of some hill snow here as well. And later, as this area of low pressure feeds in, we will see some very strong winds starting to develop once again. So the Met Office have issued further warnings for Sunday's weather. As we take a look through the week, it stays fairly up and down. Those temperatures a little bit up and down too, perhaps a bit milder by Tuesday. Goodbye.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It is 6:27. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and on your radio. Loads of you getting in touch already. Got to mention Newcastle at the top, because I mentioned Newcastle under Lyme.
And on Tyne.
Newcastle upon Tyne. And there's Newcastle in Northern Ireland, County Down. But also, says Phil, Newcastle Emlyn in Wales. Didn't realise there were so many Newcastles. But this is what we need to know.
Reminds me when I was in Canada once when I was younger, and I was racing to the airport to catch my plane back to London. And they said, "Where are you headed?" And I said, "London." They said, "London, England." I said, "Yeah, London, England. Of course, London, England. No, there's a London, Ontario, and that's where your plane is going. I booked on the wrong one. Yeah.
Joking.
So
Just goes to show.
lots of names like that all over the world, I guess.
Yeah, isn't it funny?
Yeah.
Anthony says, greetings. Just want to let you know, I'm so happy to hear the national anthem gets my blood flowing and the ticker kick-started.
I know. I wasn't sure when we first started playing the national anthem at 6 o'clock that it would work, because I thought it's a bit old-fashioned. But it's
good.
It's lovely. It's
good.
Really good. If you haven't got up in time for it, do. It's just before 6. And we play lovely, lovely countryside views and castles and, you know, and it's just gorgeous. It really does make you feel proud, which I think occasionally we have to remind ourselves to feel proud.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being proud of being British, is there?
No, and
we're told not to be, in a way.
You read the papers and all of the media, I know, is so often doing negative stories, and I think it would be wonderful to be proud again. So, yeah, get up just before 6.
We should all wear Union Jack suits. So maybe we should.
I don't know about that.
Maybe we shouldn't change our outfit, actually, because it can be controversial, can't it?
Yes, very.
Minnie Mouse.
Minnie Mouse, yes, she's changed to hers. She's foregone her classic polka dot dress for a progressive and sustainable blue pantsuit designed by Stella McCartney. There it is.
I mean, why is Stella McCartney design? I mean, how do you design that?
Well,
it's a blotchy pair of pyjamas.
She's wearing a pair of pyjamas, yeah, with blue dots.
It's in honour of Women's History Month, which takes place in March. But now that tells me something. I didn't realise that. That means it's not going to be around for long, is it?
No, it's not, apparently.
It's a gimmick.
It's just to celebrate the Disneyland Paris's 30th anniversary. And Stella McCartney explained that the outfit is meant to transform the cartoon into a symbol of progress for a new generation. Are we impressed?
I mean, no. I mean, that's absolute, to pinch a word from Boris Johnson, piffle.
Yep, pyramid of. But it's got us talking about Disneyland Paris's 30th anniversary, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's 30 years old already.
I mean, crackers, I have to wear a pant... I mean, if she wants to wear a pantsuit, fine. I mean, I don't care what Minnie Mouse is wearing, but to try and put it in those sort of terms, so it's progressive and... no, it's just a change of outfit.
Yeah, it's just a change. Modernise. Why not?
Crackers.
Anyway, do stay with us because we've got plenty more to come, including all of those talks about the day's front pages. We'll be looking through the papers as well.
Yes, we will. Stay with us.
Key is here to answer all your questions on equity release. How easy, for instance, is the process? At Key, we make it easy. Our expert advisors will support you every step of the way. We encourage you to involve your family and we'll leave you to make a decision in your own time. So why not see how much cash you could release with our free online calculator? Key, equity release that's right for you.
This year, bring the cinema home with Sky Cinema.
Let's get this party started.
Bring home tire-spinning action. Star-studded space epics. Bring home the carnage.
Oh, yeah!
And ruthless dummy suckers.
Oh, gross. Well, that happened.
Bring home the big one. Bring home Ecto One. Or even The One. A year of epic movies for just £11 a month. Bring the cinema home with Sky Cinema.
Attention sale lovers. At Ron Skinner & Sons, we'll give you up to £1,000 towards your finance deposit on every single car. With over 1,500 high-quality cars in stock, all at our lowest ever prices. Pre-approve your finance in only 60 seconds using our free online finance checker. Call into your nearest showroom today. Ron Skinner & Sons in Cardiff, Tredegar, Neyland and Crosshands, or at ronskinnerandsons.co.uk.
Ron Skinner & Sons, where cars cost less.
Blimey, Money Super 7. Your motorway shenanigans could have compromised our entire operation. But your leap of faith did save Dan an impressive £264 on his car insurance. And saved him £150 on the costs of running his car. Double whammy.
The Money Super 7, helping Britain save on car insurance and so much more. Super Save with Money Supermarket.
.33, a very good morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne live across the UK on your TV and your radio and live across the world on the old Tinternet.
Yes, and lots of people are watching all over the world, so a very good morning to you, or good evening, depending on where you are.
Oh, that's a point.
Should we take a look at today's front pages? The Times claims that Sue Gray is extremely frustrated that her report was delayed and redacted due to ongoing Met Police investigations.
Well, The Guardian looks into that report as well, saying that its release is imminent, though we've heard that before.
Yeah, and will it be worth reading? The Eye also reports that Sue Gray is in the final stages of releasing those findings.
Now, despite reports to the contrary, The Express says the Prime Minister is determined to go ahead with the National Insurance tax hike.
Yeah, that's in a lot of them. The Independent follow the same line, but also say that more serious allegations may have been removed. Oh, that's about the report, yeah.
The Daily Mail leads with outrage at the police over number 10 probe shambles.
And to the Telegraph, and there they're talking about energy bills to, well, more or less to double, but to hit 1,000, is that 900?
Yeah.
From April.
Oh, I mean, something has to be done. That is just not sustainable. I'll just tell you for why. Patricia's emailed in. She said, my heating has doubled. I'm 86 and hate the cold. Well, 86-year-old Patricia should not be taking a massive hike in her energy prices. It's just not right.
It's terrifying is what it is, isn't it?
Especially...
If you're old, I mean, that's something to fear. You actually fear turning the heating on, and I think that is criminal. When it's cold, and particularly if you're older, but you know, if you have got a family as well, the idea that you will fear turning the heating on, I think, is unforgivable in this day and age.
Yeah, I agree. Now, the Daily Mail accuses gas companies BP and Shell of profiting from the energy crisis to the tune of £900.
A second? Ooh. The Financial Times reports that the Met Police have been accused of a stitch-up in relation to how the reporting of Partygate makes them look.
The Sun uses its front page to show some Strictly people. Nadia Bichkova and Kai Widrington.
Well done.
No idea who these people are, but
they
they're
were
kissing.
Caught kissing in a hotel bar.
They're kissing. So there you go.
What's the world come to? The Daily Star claims Downing Street had a cunning plan to avoid being caught partying during lockdown.
Yes.
It's not funny though, really, is it?
Not really, no, but you've got to smile about it in a way, otherwise you're going to cry, I think. Yeah. Let's go through the papers with the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and Labour councillor and donor Kevin Craig. Good to see you both this morning. The front of the Mail, Dawn.
I wish we could bring you better news this morning, and it's fairly grey weather outside as well. Outrage at police over number 10 probe shambles. Every single paper has covered this story in one way or another. And this is basically the absolute anger I think we're all feeling over this. Boris is finally set to be handed the heavily censored Partygate dossier. Well, as you said, Anne, what's the point now? It's, you know, because the Metropolitan Police have got involved suddenly at the last minute, it's going to be so heavily redacted that you're not going to know who did what, when and how. I mean, it's just going to be a load of black lines.
So what do you make of that? I mean, I think a lot of people smell a rat, but they're not quite sure what sort of rat to smell.
I think something is a bit whiffy.
Roland.
Who's the rat?
I think something is a bit whiffy about it. And the issue I have with it is, you know, just a couple of weeks ago, Christina Dick, who was head of the Met, was going, no, we won't be having a criminal investigation. And now suddenly, as Sue Gray's report is literally ready, and we've all been on tenterhooks for a week now, there is a criminal investigation. So the timing is a bit offish.
To be fair, though, they've requested that there's not a lot of detail goes into the... Doesn't mean Sue Gray has to stick to that, does it?
No, it is a request. And, you know, I have issues with this one as well, Stephen, because requested not to put too much information into it. But this isn't a crime, if a crime has been committed, that is a trial by jury offence. You can't influence a judge. So if it's just going by a judge, what does it matter? If
they're just £100 fines, aren't they?
Well, that's exactly it, Anne. So I don't understand why it needs to be redacted. The only reason I can think of is that it gives people that may or may not have been at these parties time to get rid of any evidence that might be lying around, like the party hat, you know, just get rid of it. It's
cake.
The cake.
Was there a cake? I mean, this is an enormous controversy. Was or was there not a cake?
Well, apparently an email's been uncovered that suggests there was a cake
But was it a Union Jack cake?
And was it a dangerous cake?
Or was it a Peppa Pig cake?
Wow.
And was he confronted with the cake, or did he plan it?
Oh,
I mean,
ambushed.
Ambushed, that's right.
Ambushed.
This is what I think a lot of people sitting at home now, worried about whether to put their heating on, must be so annoyed about.
I think there's fatigue creeping in about the party's investigation, and people are, whether they're left or right wing, they're starting to have enough of it, and I think that's working in Boris Johnson's favour. Actually, that folks actually want to talk about the energy crisis, they want to talk about Ukraine, they want to talk about the other issues, and I think those around him are hoping that they feel he's had a good week, and that he's if you think of Boris as a boat, comparatively, and he's in a sort of little cove, trying to catch his breath after having survived the first crisis.
So has this been choreographed?
I don't think... Do you mean the whole Sue Gray, Met Police?
The whole Sue Gray, Cressida Dick, yeah.
Well,
it's been choreographed.
A lot of folks this morning and last night were saying when it looked like the Sue Gray report was going to come out over the weekend, which I would have been very surprised about as a public relations person in the daytime. I'm naive. I don't think it has. I always think the best in people, and I think it's just shambles. I don't think Boris is particularly that organised to be this clever, really.
Well, maybe people around him, I don't know. We talked about the energy crisis. I mean, what's the Mirror saying?
Well, the Mirror has done a really good job. It's front page, and then it comes in again on 5. And we're all aware of the sort of superficial headlines on this, but when you go into the story off the front page, listen to this, right? The BP boss, Bernard Looney, that's the real name, Looney, in November described BP as a cash machine because of soaring commodity prices. Last year, he was on 1.7 million a year. The boss of Shell is on 5.2 million. Is it any wonder that these guys are they're going to be rinsed, whether it's the Conservatives or a future Labour government? You know, there's a reckoning coming. And it's a very good detailed story there, which shows you that you've talked about the elderly who should not be going to bed at night worried about bills, but there are people making huge money, £7 billion in 3 months, says the Mirror.
Well, the North Sea oil and gas companies are set to its record cash flow of £14.9 billion. So if we're talking about taxing people, why don't we put a windfall tax on those companies rather than making pensioners terrified to put their heating on? Surely there must be ways of raising the money, but from the companies who are absolutely
pulling it in.
But isn't there an argument to say with all of these things, it's never as simple as it seems, is it? I mean, you start putting windfall taxes on people and we end up still having to foot the bill for that.
Well, I mean, I'm sure somehow we will be made to pay for it because, you know, the companies get away with it. Meanwhile, you know, you've got your 80-year-old listener and viewer who can't, you know, is terrified to turn their heating on.
It is that simple, Steve. Sorry, Dawn. It is that simple, though. It really is. There is, even if you love business, if you love creating wealth, I'm very into all of that, but there is enough here, you know, for there to be some form of adjustment made.
Just having read the detail, their front page headline that these firms are making £900 a second.
Yeah.
Do you think that's accurate?
I do. Yeah, I do, because it's the way it's set up. Yeah.
Aren't the profit margins on energy supposedly very tight? What we've been told.
Well, we have been told that,
price
but
of oil, price of gas.
Doesn't sound like it, does it?
It doesn't add up. It doesn't add up, you know. And if you get into the detail of reading balance sheets, and if you look at top-level executive remuneration, you know, there is room. And I think it's part of the bigger picture that now, even if you love business and you love wealth creation, the balance is not right or fair. And you know, the viewers and people across the country are feeling that in their real lives.
Let's look at the front of the eye, looking at the army. Cuts. There can't be more cuts to the army, can there?
That was my reaction, Steve, at this story. It was on the front page of the Eye, Army to cut 1 in 4 infantry soldiers. Who knew in a pub quiz that there are now set to be barely 20,000 infantry personnel in the next couple of years, down from 25,000 in 97. And the MOD say it's all about making the infantry more agile, more lethal and more expeditionary. but it's just a surprisingly small number, right?
It's not like there's anything going on to worry about, is there? I mean,
I know.
Is it
Ukraine,
because
anybody?
the nature of the military means that infantry is now sort of rather old-fashioned and we're looking towards other things?
That is exactly the underlying thrust, and they talk about the influence is using numbers and capability more efficiently to protect the United Kingdom from today's threats. And of course, it's linked into the use of technology and the nature of modern conflicts. But it's still a remarkably small number. The fact that, as the eye says, in 2024-25, we'll be down to 19,400 infantry personnel for the whole of this country.
And how many troops has Russia got on the border with Ukraine? 106,000?
I think it's a larger number.
But they're not actually going to invade, they're just a gathering.
But this is the problem, isn't it? When you look at countries like Russia, where they haven't got their tanks are not as good as ours, their military, it could be argued, are not as well trained as ours, and yet it's the sheer numbers.
The number of them.
It's the numbers, and if we can't go up against those sort of numbers.
And which country has the biggest navy in the world at the moment as well? And that's China. So it's all looking a bit scary, isn't it?
And to add on that, even somebody very respected like Richard Dannett, former head of the army, he says, that our armed forces are now too small to fight conflicts like Iraq and Afghanistan in the future, which is another debate, obviously.
Yeah.
We won't go there.
Yeah. Have we got time for another one? Someone tell me? Yes, yeah.
Should we have some fun, Stephen?
Go on, then, because we all like a bit of Blackadder.
Bit of Blackadder. Yeah, speak for yourself, love. This is the Daily Star's front page. Excuse me. And yes, of course, it is a serious story. It is about Partygate and Cressida Dick and Boris Johnson. But the Daily Star had some fun with it, as they do, and this is comparing it to a Blackadder who had a cunning plan, if you remember. He
did.
And this is Boris, who's got a cunning plan. I think possibly to claim insanity, as Baldrick once infamously did, didn't he?
We claimed everything.
Probably the way out of it.
Yeah, it doesn't do us any good, though. I mean, this is how we can look at this and go, oh, yeah, they've got a point, which is not a good place to be.
Well, on the upside, Boris is going to spend the next few days phoning Putin, isn't he?
Yes.
Yes, I wonder how that's going to go.
I bet Putin's terrified, don't you?
Well, interestingly, though, a lot of people would disagree with you on what to make of Boris. Chris has emailed in. People keep saying we're sick of Boris. We are not.
Yeah.
We're sick of the sensationalism of Partygate.
Yeah. Another one, Semester says, this party hype is totally media-driven, aided and abetted by Dominic Cummings and the Brexit Remainers. For goodness sake, Russia is about to invade Ukraine, and still the main topic of conversation is something that may or may not have happened with civil servants who were probably working 18-hour days at the time.
It's not
Fair
the
point.
cake, is it? It's the hypocrisy, though.
Yeah, well, keep your thoughts coming through. And in the meantime, we shall catch you two later. Dawn Neeson.
Thank you.
I've just been told we've got to jump on, because it's a good segue, actually.
Oh, go on then.
Isn't
Segue
it?
for me.
A segue into the Eastern Europe thing that we're just being told about, because the Prime Minister is going to hold telephone talks with Vladimir Putin, and he's going to look at visiting Eastern Europe.
Yeah, and we were talking about the military. Well, the Russian military currently has apparently 100,000 troops and tanks and whatever just on Ukraine's border as we speak.
Let's talk to Ewan Grant, contributing writer for the UK Defence Forum and former law enforcement intelligence analyst. That's quite a title. Good to see you this morning, Ewan. Look, will it have any impact, the Prime Minister heading to the region and speaking to Vladimir Putin?
The answer is, I think, yes. The question is how much. But Britain is not a bit player. We're obviously not the United States. But we do have diplomatic clout and some economic leverage, particularly regarding the Russian oligarchs' money in London.
I mean, everybody wants to know whether or not this is a threat that we should all be worrying about, but also whether Boris is up to the negotiating with Putin. What do you think?
Well, I would have my doubts on part two, but I think Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has played a blinder. It is a threat. It is a real threat.
When you say he's played a blinder, what do you mean? Can you explain?
He seems to have got everything. He seems to have got all the elements. He's been warning about how Russia can play a double game with compromising information on Western politicians, Western businesses. Russia's a past master at that. He's an ex-soldier, and he seems to realise the art of the possible.
We've just been seeing a lot of pictures there of Putin talking. If we do understand that Boris Johnson is going to talk to him, can they actually achieve anything through a phone call?
It tests the water. It can maybe get Mr. Putin to step back from the brink if everybody is saying this. President Macron yesterday, obviously Secretary Blinken of the US with his counterpart Lavrov. And I notice also it's just been announced that Ben Wallace is planning to go to Moscow to see his defense counterpart. Now that makes a difference because in Russia, it's a different tradition. Traditionally, the defense minister is often a serviceman. And Ben Wallace is an ex-serviceman. I think that could make something of a difference, but not too much.
So there could be an element of respect between those two former servicemen that maybe Putin and Johnson wouldn't have.
Precisely.
Gosh. OK, well, we'll leave it there. It's something we're going to be talking about and watching for a great deal more. Thank you very much indeed. That's Ewan Grant, contributing writer for the United Kingdom Defence Forum and former law enforcement intelligence analyst.
Interesting times, something to watch very closely. OK, let's change tack significantly for you and talk sport. Aidan McGee is here. Good to see you.
Hi guys, how are you?
Hello.
Yeah, well,
Quite
good.
a long title that previous gentleman had, wasn't it?
He had very long.
title,
I just think he must have a very big business card.
Yeah, I just prefer Sir. No.
So, oh yeah, I remember that. I'll tell you what, Rafa, let's talk Rafa.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look, if you'd asked me 3 weeks ago, even when all the Djokovic stuff was happening, whether he was in contention to even go deep into this tournament, I'd have said I'd have had doubts over that because he's struggled all year with a foot injury. But isn't it sort of peculiar, isn't it? I mean, we're talking, all the talk, I'm coming on here at shows like this and elsewhere talking about can Djokovic get the 21st title? It was almost a fait accompli. And here we are, one match away from Nadal being set to move to 21 Grand Slams. Yeah. Maybe, and does he become undisputably the best at this point? It's an extraordinary tale, but don't rule out Daniel Medvedev.
I was going to say, tell us more about him. I don't know an awful lot about him, but he's good, isn't he?
Oh, terrific. I mean, he's the US Open champion, so say no more. He had well, if you compare the semi-finals to the two men had, Nadal won in 4 sets against Matteo Berrettini of France. You look at what Medvedev had to come through against Stefanos Tsitsipas, the complaint against the coaching on court as well, which Tsitsipas claimed was a bit of gamesmanship, a bit of tactics to try and sort of, shift the analysis or shift the onus back to him during the match. But it was a tougher game. Sometimes if you had a tougher game, it leaves you fatigued. Nadal had the advantage of 2 days rest going into the semi-final. There's a bit of fatigue there, but having said that, sometimes when someone's tested more and pushed to the limit, it leaves them in better shape going into the final. But Medvedev, they've met 4 times. He won the most recent one against Nadal. Nadal won the 3 before that. One of them was actually a Grand Slam final. That was in 2020 at Flushing Meadow, the US Open. So they've got history with each other. Medvedev, 10 years younger. Maybe it's his time. Sometimes I've seen these tournaments develop into kind of processional events, and you think, well, Djokovic is not there, Federer's not there, Thiem's not there, Murray's not there. Maybe it's time for Nadal. But sometimes there's an outlier. Sometimes someone creeps up on the inside straight, and that man could be Medvedev.
Do you know, we normally like an underdog. We do. Don't we? But with something like this, people like Rafa.
Yeah, he's very popular, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he was quite diplomatic when he spoke about Djokovic. I mean, he's a huge rival over a number of years. He said, look, Djokovic made his decision. I respect his decision, but he has to understand that these decisions come with consequences. And I thought he probably crystallised the argument better than anybody else.
Yes, he did. He said it beautifully.
Yeah, and you think, I think the amount of times I've spoken about it again and again and again, and people are still asking me questions. I think he kind of nailed it in there. He was giving Djokovic the due respect that he's owed as somebody of his calibre should be. But he was saying that rules are the rules are the rules are the rules.
And it's so ironic because the 21 titles is what Djokovic was counting on, and which everybody thought he would achieve.
Well, we all thought it was. I mean, that court case, the issue last week about he might take him to court and he's going to sue over the prize money that he was going to win. Well, hang on a minute, Nadal's got something to say about that.
Yeah.
Medvedev's got something to say about that.
Yeah.
So I mean,
that's a bit cheeky.
Yeah, it is a bit. And so, but I just don't listen. Nadal's name's written in lights at the moment. It looks as if his pedigree and his calibre will carry him through. I've just got a feeling for Medvedev, though. I really have. I just think that he's the favourite. Don't forget, he's the favourite. He's the pre-tournament favourite in the absence of.
When are they playing? Isn't it while we're on air tomorrow?
Yes.
While we're doing breakfast tomorrow.
Yes, it will be.
They will be playing during that. That will be a nail biter.
I'll be here. I'll be taking you through shot by shot, backhand, forehand, court volleys. I'll be all over it, I promise you.
Yeah, don't watch it though. Well, if you don't tune away from us to watch it.
No, don't tune away from us.
No, I can tell you all about it. It's fine.
We'll tell you all about it. We'll give you all the rundown.
Let's not overegg the pudding.
I'm just getting excited because I want to hear all the news.
And what about Ashley Barty?
Yeah, I know. Look, extraordinary story again. I mean, somebody with considerable pedigree, 2 Grand Slams under her belt. She's the Wimbledon champion. But Australia has not seen a single... She has a very sort of easy manner in interviews. She's been playing cricket during the tournament. Yeah, she's been very relaxed. If you see her interviewed on TV, comes across as a very likeable individual. She's up against Danielle Collins, who's 28. Barty's 25. So they're not like really young. They're certainly not as young as Emma Raducanu was, winning it back in September, the US Open. But it should be a decent final again. And that could take her to 3 Grand Slams in quite a short period of time. And if she wins that, Ash Barty, not only will her popularity in Australia be elevated to levels not seen previously, certainly not for a women's player, not for a female player, but it could also usher in probably a new era of dominance in a way, because if that's 3 slams in a COVID era when everything's been condensed, that's a really consistent level of performance. And you have to say she'd probably then become the outstanding player in the world. And she's the top seed as well.
Let's hope that there's no controversy in that match, though.
What, controversy?
Yeah, because otherwise we'd have Partygate as well as Partygate.
Oh, no! You've been warming up to that, haven't you?
I gave him a backhander to say that.
Lovely stuff, Aidan. Thank you. We'll catch up with you in a little while. Just loads of you getting in touch this morning, which is really encouraging. We'd love to hear from you. A lot of stuff on the highway code, this one, and I love this one actually because we've heard it before, but it's a very good point from Eve. If cyclists have the same rights as motorists, will they pay road tax and have insurance?
Well, I suppose they're not exactly the same rights, but everybody's got the right to be on the road, haven't they?
I wonder if you should have a cycle licence.
Yeah. OK. Well, anyway, and lots more...
My driving test
a
few years ago.
Yeah,
I was told to take the next available left. I literally
that as well.
Available left. I went to an NCP car park, had to pay £1.50 to get out.
Oh, I love it.
You failed. Yeah, I bet you failed. Lovely, Nick.
Driving test failures. Love to hear from you, GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, and stay with us, though. We've got plenty more to come, including the latest updates on the Sue Gray report. First, though, here's the weather.
Hello, good morning. Some very stormy weather across northern parts of the country this morning. Some very windy weather to come through the day today. An area of rain pushing southwards, but it will turn a little bit brighter later on. Now, we've got this cold front, some very tightly packed isobars, and it's this that's bringing some very strong winds across northern parts of the UK through the day on Saturday. Stay tuned to the latest forecast. Through this morning, we'll have widely gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps 70, possibly 80 miles an hour. The Met Office have issued an amber wind warning for northeastern parts of Scotland, where we could see some really damaging weather through the course of the day today. Now, skies will brighten through the day as this cold front slides southwards. Some sunny spells and a few showers feeding through, but very blustery throughout the afternoon, so certainly not feeling like 10 to 12 degrees on the thermometer. Even further south, it will be milder, but there will be more of a breeze than we've been used to of late. Now, the worst of the winds will continue at first through Saturday evening before easing away. And then we have a ridge of high pressure building in. So what that means is the skies will clear. We'll see those winds easing right down, and that'll allow temperatures to take a bit of a tumble. So a cold start to the day on Saturday, quite a widespread frost, some pockets of ice out there as well. Temperatures in our rural spots will dip close to, if not a little bit below freezing. But a really different start to the day on Sunday. Plenty of sunshine out there first thing. Sunshine getting to work on that frost. But through the day, we will see the skies turn hazier across the north and west as that cloud starts to filter in. So a fine day for much of England and Wales, but a much wetter and windier picture for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland. The risk of some hill snow here as well. And later, as this area of low pressure feeds in, we will see some very strong winds starting to develop once again. So the Met Office have issued further warnings for Sunday's weather. As we take a look through the week, it stays fairly up and down. Those temperatures a little bit up and down too, perhaps a bit milder by Tuesday. Goodbye.
My My word, Money Super 7, that was a close one. But you two were in and out of there in no time. And you saved Sarah an impressive £327 on a new credit card.
The Money Super 7, helping Britain save on credit cards and so much more. Super Save with Money's Supermarket.
Hello, Sky. Play Sky Sports F1. Hello, Sky! Volume
up! With streaming TV from Sky, with 6 powerful speakers built in for Dolby Atmos sound.
When we all play the National Lottery a little, fun stuff happens near you. From clean beaches to bringing history to life. Funding museums, supporting inspiring music programmes, and helping people explore the great outdoors. £30 million a week to good causes. The National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Are you protective? Could you protect space? Everyone's got that one thing they were born to do. Find your force in the RAF.
New Active Shape by XLS. Be strong. Be in your best shape and try the new Active Shape range by XLS. It's super delicious.
I tried to quit several times, always making excuses, until smoking was starting to affect my health. I decided to quit with nicotine.
Nicotine Clear Patch provides 24 hours of controlled nicotine release.
And if I have a craving, I grab a mini, which works fast.
Use Nicotine Clear Patch and Minis, an unbeatable way of quitting smoking. Now working with the British Lung Foundation for healthier lungs.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on the 29th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. You can even catch up on the GB News app. So take us with you this morning wherever you go. Coming up on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
The Sue Gray report into Downing Street parties is imminent, apparently, amid anger that it could include significant redactions. So basically, someone's got the black marker out. We'll get the latest on the potential fallout.
Also coming up, highway code changes come into effect today. Changes include having cyclists cycle in the middle of some roads and new fines for changing just like a song on your phone while driving.
And Donald Trump appears to announce he's running for president in 2024 after declaring himself the 47th president while golfing in Florida. So he was the 45th and the 47th.
Yeah. So you can join in any of our discussions, of course, by emailing us gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. Do you think he's serious, Donald Trump, or do you think he's doing it just to stir?
I don't know.
Bit of both,
To say that is very. Do you get criticism of what you wear?
Always.
Do you?
Completely and utterly. Everything from earrings to hairstyle to necklaces to everything.
You think you get away with it in a suit? Well, I've got these two friends.
Yeah.
Neil and Sybil Crowther. You know who you are.
Right.
Honestly, I get it's Neil's worse than Sybil. But today I've had a text message saying, collar, tie and suit looking good. This morning you've passed.
Oh, so they give you the lowdown every day?
Every day. The yellow tie I had on last week was not up to par, apparently.
Well, it did, because it went nicely with my goldie sort of jacket, didn't it?
Honestly.
Don't engage with criticism.
Don't engage. They're a pair of very lovely... Very lovely 79-year-olds.
If they didn't love you, would they? Yeah.
Honestly, wait till I speak to Sybil on when I'm driving
in fact,
home.
Jackie's got in touch, said, just wanted to say I've always enjoyed Stephen and Anne whenever they've done anything before together. And now so really pleased they're doing a programme together. Well done, GB News, for bringing them together.
Yeah, excellent. Talking of people who are older, though, like Neil and Sybil, loads of you getting in touch about heating. I mean, loads of you. And this, I think, is so important because this is about you. This is about how you're coping.
If I were in the House of Commons, this is what I would stand up and be talking about, not parties anymore.
Let's hope people are listening. Di in Wales, morning, Di, says, I'm a 70-year-old widow on a pension only. My heating is off. I wear many layers and sit with a blanket on. I go to bed at 8 to keep warm. Only put the heating on if I have to. It is such a worry. I make soups to keep warm. Meat and fish are a luxury now.
I honestly, I think this is unforgivable for somebody. Sue from Devon here, I'm 68. I'm so scared of the cost of the heating that I'm now wearing my coat inside the house for most of the day. The rising costs are not covered by my rise in pension because they've taken away the triple lock. Being cold makes me feel depressed and generally unwell. I try to keep active, but as I'm on the waiting list for a hip replacement, this is difficult. Thank you for reading. Love your programme.
These are terrible.
This is real.
This is you.
This is real problems.
Yeah. Rosie uses a prepayment meter. I've noticed the hike already. She says, I usually top up £20 a week in the winter on the gas, but I'm already having to turn the heating off in the early evening once the kids are in and the flat has warmed up, but it cools down too fast.
Yes, it really does at the moment. Liz says, yes, I've started turning the heating down or off. It's ridiculous, but it's on my mind every day. I have a blanket and live in my dressing gown when it gets too cold. Some of the occupants of Downing Street have no idea or concept of how many people have to live. And trust me, I'm nowhere near as bad off as many.
Yeah.
We may need to get we may need to sort climate change, but many just need to survive this winter.
Teresa says, myself and my husband are retired and we are just managing to live on our pensions. If the energy bills go up double, there is no way we can afford them. The triple lock has been cancelled, which he promised wouldn't happen. I'm a lady of the 1950s who had to wait till I was 66 to retire. Boris Johnson said he'd look into that, but he seems to have forgotten all about it.
Exactly, and it does seem that a lot of people getting in touch are supportive of Boris, say, let him get on with the job, and this is the job they want him to get on with. Somebody else says, I work in Newcastle and haven't met anyone who talks about Downing Street parties, but heating, on the other hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jackie has got some solutions. She's 73. I've always been tight about turning the heating on. Put a hot water bottle at the base of your back and a throw. Also, put clothes on top of your pyjamas so there's no cold shock getting dressed. You don't sweat in cold weather, so only shower when going out somewhere special.
We shouldn't be having to talk like this in the 21st century, should we?
Shouldn't have to. I mean, you've got a fair point, Jackie, but you shouldn't have to do that. It's scandalous, actually, that people are struggling
like that. But I do think that, yes, I totally get that Partygate is annoying and very upsetting for people who suffered during COVID, thinking about how maybe they were having too many parties in Downing Street. On the other hand, don't we want the government to get on with, problems that are facing us now? Because those are acute, and then they need to actually address them.
Yeah,
that's where the votes are, isn't it?
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? You'd think so, and people have to live. We have to live every day, and if people are struggling with that, it needs to be looked at. Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GBnews. Well, talking of the whole Partygate situation, Sue Gray is expected to deliver her report to the Prime Minister before the police inquiry concludes, but no precise date has been given. But it is said the PM will get it shortly.
The Metropolitan Police have asked that the report be censored in parts so that there is only minimal reference made to the very events they're looking into in order to avoid any prejudice into our investigation.
Yeah, I don't know how that makes sense. Let's see if we can get some answers from Peter Blexley, a former Scotland Yard detective who joins us now. Good to see you, Peter.
Hi.
Can there be any prejudice into an investigation like this?
Well, this entire situation is farcical, and the blame for that lies squarely at the feet of the Met Police Commissioner, Cressida Dick. When these allegations first came out, and they remain allegations, let's remember, nobody's been issued with a fine, with a penalty notice. Nobody's been convicted of breaking any of these laws or regulations just yet. When the allegations broke through credible media outlets, including the Daily Mirror, ITV News and others, the police, the Commissioner should at that point have said, these are matters for the police. We will investigate. But of course, she didn't. She's in fact said, we don't investigate matters retrospectively, which was frankly ludicrous. And the Met said they were not going to investigate these crimes. So that opens the door for a civil servant, Sue Gray, to then investigate these allegations of crime. And now, of course, we've come to this entirely unsatisfactory position whereby the police have gone, oh, well, actually, we will investigate them now. And of course, they are asking for parts of Sue Gray's report not to be released. And of course, the media and many millions of people are waiting for this report.
Is there any, forgive me, Peter, but is there any sort of legal reason, any part of the investigative process which would justify that information not being released? I mean, this isn't any evidence that's going to go to a jury at any point, is it?
No. If, for example, and I'm going to hypothesise now, if we were talking about a murder investigation, then of course the police might quite rightly ask for the media not to release certain details, because it would be tried by a judge and a jury, and the prosecution wouldn't want the jury being tainted by the release of some particular pieces of evidence. That would be right. That would be entirely understandable. But these are what they call summary-only offences. So they can only be tried in a magistrate's courts, and there will be fines issued, potentially, if any of these crimes are proven. And so, no, as far as I'm concerned, there is very little, if any, justification for this. But Cressida Dick has shown quite clearly here that she does not lead, she follows. Her judgment has been woefully inadequate. And this is yet another huge failing on her behalf.
So do you think it is down to her arrogance, or is it, has she been got at in some way, which some of the papers are almost suggesting?
Well, of course, now her independence is called into question. And quite rightly, I understand why so many conspiracy theorists are saying she's on the side of Downing Street. She's been silenced. She's a puppet who's being led by her political masters. I understand all of that. And her inaction, her refusal to investigate these at the earliest possible stage, has just added fuel to the fire of all those conspiracy theories.
Is there any argument to say she's trying to protect her officers? I mean, I don't know what you make of it as someone who's worked their way up through the Met. I mean, what are we to make of the people in Downing Street who clearly knew the officers, who must have known parties were going on? They must have seen the booze being wheeled in and the suitcase checked to see what was in it and all those sort of things. I mean, they've known what was going on and not done anything about it. Now, is that their fault? Is there pressure on them in those circumstances just to keep their mouths shut? How does it work?
Well, there is, of course, an ongoing inquiry into the culture and standards of the Metropolitan Police. And that was born out of many horrific stories that were released in recent months and years. And it might have to tackle exactly that point. What were those police officers who stand at the end of Downing Street? We've all seen the photographs of them with their firearms, looking very menacing and protective. What were they doing? What were Boris Johnson's close protection officers doing? In other words, his bodyguards that shadow him 24/7. What were they doing? What did they see? Again, all of these things might just add fuel to the fire of the conspiracy theorists that are saying there's a cover-up going on here. There is no transparency. There is no openness, all of which could have been alleviated if Cressida Dick robustly and firmly at the first sniff of these allegations have gone, these are a matter for the police to investigate, and we will do exactly that.
It is being reported that it's Cressida Dick who has requested that the report be redacted. But could it go ahead anyway, do you see, legally? Could it go ahead unredacted if that's what they want to do?
Well, this is such an unclear and uncomfortable situation now, because Sue Gray, as a very senior civil servant, may indeed decide that she's going to ignore the request from the police and publish it. But there is no precedent. We don't really know who's in charge, who's got the primacy over this investigation. And none of this would have arisen if Cressida Dick had said, we are investigating, we are the lead agency here, we take charge, we investigate it thoroughly, and we will release our findings as and when we see fit. But now we're just in a confusing landscape where nobody knows who's in charge. The media and the nation, many people in the nation, are desperate to hear these findings and look at this utterly unsatisfactory situation we all find ourselves in.
Oh, it's really interesting to talk to you. Peter Blexley, former Met detective, thanks ever so much for talking to us today.
Thank you.
Sometimes I think, Anne, it does get confusing, and anything to do with politics or the police, you sort of wonder where the lines are. It's when you speak to someone on the inside like that who can just say, no, this isn't right. This shouldn't be happening. And to get that perspective.
Happening. It's happening. No matter how much we protest about it, it's still happening. Are they just rules unto themselves?
Yeah,
Possibly
we shall say who polices the police and all that sort of argument.
Oh, yeah, and who polices number 10?
Oh, yeah.
Don't know anymore. I thought the Met were in there, but clearly not.
No. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines this morning at 14 minutes past 7, and tensions continue to rise between Russia and Ukraine as the Prime Minister is set to visit the region in the coming days. Boris Johnson says he's determined to accelerate diplomatic efforts. He says he's going to speak to President Putin on the phone. He's set to consider a range of options to alleviate Russian aggression, including military deployments and bolstering NATO defences.
2 people have been arrested following a stabbing of a teenage boy in Norwich yesterday evening. The teen was pronounced dead at the scene. Police say a man in his 40s and a woman in her 30s were arrested shortly after in connection with the incident.
A major overhaul of the highway code comes into force today, with concerns that millions of drivers are unaware of the changes. The new rules aim to boost protection for cyclists and pedestrians. And as I want to find her name very quickly on my list of paper here, Emma, who says it's also about protecting horses as well. It's very dangerous on the roads as cars don't give us any room. That's a very valid point, actually.
And nearly a quarter of older people say they'll be forced to choose between heating and eating if bills continue to rise. That's according to research by the charity Age UK. I have to say that everything you've been telling us as well reflects exactly that. More than half of over 65s saying they'll have to heat their homes less to counteract the rising cost of living.
Now, some people with long COVID who suffer from breathlessness could have hidden damage to their lungs. That's according to a study by scientists at Oxford University who are looking at lung abnormalities that aren't picked up during routine scans. A larger, more detailed study is underway to confirm the results and better understand how to treat the issue.
And Storm Malik is set to batter Britain with winds of up to 80 miles an hour expected in some areas. Yellow weather warnings are in place across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, with the Met Office warning that the storm could cause damage to homes, power lines and transport.
How important it is when we're so grateful to all of you who get in touch on all of these issues, whether it's the light-hearted stuff or not. But that was a really good point from Emma. John says no mention in the highway code of e-scooters or the law banning privately owned e-scooters in public.
Do you know that they're working on a noise, apparently, I read yesterday. They're working on putting into e-scooters a noise that warns pedestrians that they're coming up behind you.
Oh.
You know, a bit like reversing noises on cars.
Yeah.
But I mean, how they?
But would you have to do the same with electric cars then as well?
Well, yeah, but yes. Well, e-scooters shouldn't be on pavements, of course.
I don't know where you're meant to have e-scooters anymore. They're all over the spot.
Bike lanes? I don't know.
I don't know. Well, bikes don't have to go in bike lanes anymore.
No, they go in the middle of the road. That's the point. That new highway code ruling that says that cyclists should be in the middle of the road, presumably not where there's a bicycle lane.
I don't know.
No.
Oh,
just shows we've all got to read up on it now.
We need a bit more
clarity.
clarity.
Into force today.
Yeah, I don't know where you get a copy of the highway code from these days.
There must be one available online.
Yes, as with everything else. Now, a user on the social networking platform Reddit, are you on that one?
No, but I'm aware of it.
Right. Anyway, asked us Brits to spill their snobbiest opinions after confessing he thinks parents who wear pyjamas outside the house are a bad example to their kids and are setting them up to fail.
Gosh, that's taking it a bit seriously, isn't it? Amid thousands of responses, some snobby opinions include long fake nails. Yeah, I don't like long fake nails. They say they're really trashy.
I can hear you now. Hi there.
Oh, hello.
I don't know what's going on yet. Apparently another snobby opinion is your bookcase should be bigger than your television.
Oh, now that really is snobby. That really is snobby.
Also, how big your television is. If you walk into some houses and the television is the dominant feature in the entire house, what do you think of that?
Well, I sort of think, why not?
I want an enormous television.
I thought mine was really big when I got it. It's about 55 inches, I think, and now it needs that. Seems small.
No, that's small now. Yes, I want one of those big curved ones. And what about people who have tattoos? You know, on the face or maybe creeping up the neck? What about that?
Yeah, on the face I'm not a fan of, because it's just a bit obvious. A little bit up the neck, a little bit out the collar.
Yeah, just a little hint of it.
Yeah, a little hint.
Tattoos are very popular nowadays, aren't they?
Yeah, so I've got a little. Let me take my watch off. I'll show you. See a little hint of mine coming out
from
there.
Under the cuff.
Yeah.
What's the other end of it?
It goes all the way up to here.
No, is it a snake or something?
No. It's a geometric pattern. And we can hear. We can still hear. That's Alice Porter, our reporter, who will try and get her to stop talking. It's not her fault. It's technical issues. You wouldn't believe how many buttons and faders, and it's very difficult making television, you know, for those of you who end up being critical.
That's our excuse, is it? And we're sticking to it. It's very difficult.
Very difficult. Don't be snobbish about it.
No.
It's not an easy thing to do.
Well, that's another snobbery, is what you watch on your telly.
Oh, yes.
Because I remember bumping into a lady in the street once and she said, I know you. And I said, TVAM, which was on ITV at the time, if you remember. And I said, it's TVM. And she said, oh, no, I never watch ITV. And I thought, I said to her, well, you obviously do, because you wouldn't know me otherwise, would you? But there used to be a real snobbery about, oh, I only ever watch the BBC. Yeah. It's like on the radio, I only ever listen to the World Service. Do they heck?
No.
But there is a real snobbery about it.
Makes them sound good. Anyway, let us know what you're snobby about or not. GBViews at gbnews.uk. We'll have a quick look at the weather for you.
Hello, good morning. Some very stormy weather across northern parts of the country this morning. Some very windy weather to come through the day today. An area of rain pushing southwards, but it will turn a little bit brighter later on. Now, we've got this cold front, some very tightly packed isobars, and it's this that's bringing some very strong winds across northern parts of the UK through the day on Saturday. Stay tuned to the latest forecast. Through this morning, we'll have widely gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps 70, possibly 80 miles an hour. The Met Office have issued an amber wind warning for northeastern parts of Scotland, where we could see some really damaging weather through the course of the day today. Now, skies will brighten through the day as this cold front slides southwards. Some sunny spells and a few showers feeding through, but very blustery throughout the afternoon, so certainly not feeling like 10 to 12 degrees on the thermometer. Even further south, it will be milder, but there will be more of a breeze than we've been used to of late. Now, the worst of the winds will continue at first through Saturday evening before easing away. And then we have a ridge of high pressure building in. So what that means is the skies will clear. We'll see those winds easing right down, and that'll allow temperatures to take a bit of a tumble. So a cold start to the day on Saturday, quite a widespread frost, some pockets of ice out there as well. Temperatures in our rural spots will dip close to, if not a little bit below freezing. But a really different start to the day on Sunday. Plenty of sunshine out there first thing. Sunshine getting to work on that frost. But through the day, we will see the skies turn hazier across the north and west as that cloud starts to filter in. So a fine day for much of England and Wales, but a much wetter and windier picture for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland. The risk of some hill snow here as well. And later, as this area of low pressure feeds in, we will see some very strong winds starting to develop once again. So the Met Office have issued further warnings for Sunday's weather. As we take a look through the week, it stays fairly up and down. Those temperatures a little bit up and down too, perhaps a bit milder by Tuesday. Goodbye.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It is 7:24. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Are you snobbish? Are you
About
feeling
what?
snobbish about any old thing?
Would you pop out this morning to the shop in your pyjamas?
No.
That's the point.
I've had a message from Richard Dixon who says, well, I understand the PJs thing, but a weatherman without a tie, what's that all about?
See, I'm very ambivalent, especially at weekends, about ties. I mean, I know you like to wear a tie. But,
Yeah.
you know, ties, I mean, they go right back to Victorian times. What are you still doing wearing Victorian garb? I don't think you need them anymore.
Oh, I don't know. I think it's quite nice to get
I feel
dressed
as though
up.
your neck isn't properly dressed if you haven't got a tie.
I get the sense that Richard Dixon likes to get dressed up, but then I would do because it's my brother.
Oh, I see. I was going to say no relative, but clearly, OK.
Yeah, it is, yeah. But I tell you what, he's got into, he's 50 now, sorry, Richard, but he's got into this, you know, the sort of like dandy dressing where you sort of wear like a, you know, trousers and like a tweedy jacket and a bow tie and a waistcoat and all that. He's getting into all of that in his old age.
Well, why not? But I don't know. I just think that, speaking as the mother of 4 boys who had to do so much shirt ironing in my time, I used to iron those shirts, tons of the blooming things, and think, why do we still wear things that need ironing, for heaven's sake? I mean, we're in the 20th century, 21st century
but
now.
But you can get those non-iron shirts, but they still need ironing. Do you iron the bedding?
Good Lord, no. I mean, life is too short.
Oh, you see, I have to have and my handkerchiefs, I have
But why
irons.
iron the bedding? Because the minute you've got in it, it creases.
Oh, isn't it lovely getting into ironed bedding, though?
I quite agree. It's nice to look at. But would you do it? You actually do it yourself?
No.
No, you employ somebody to do it.
I send it out.
Yeah.
Shelley does my ironing.
Oh, bless her.
And I feel slightly guilty because I send the ironing out, but Shelley loves ironing. But I also think that's her job. That's her job and her business, and so it's providing income to someone. I mean, it does sound a bit.
I just don't know why we do it. I just think we are slaving ourselves to these old-fashioned things, like, you know, having things that have to have ties, like having to wear a shirt that has to be ironed every morning.
But isn't it nice, though? I mean, because I've just picked my suit for my wedding. I've ordered it this week, and you had a look at it.
Yeah, it's lovely. It will be gorgeous.
But it's a what do you call it? A frock coat. So
Yeah.
a long. I mean, it's very old-fashioned, really.
Yeah, wear a T-shirt underneath.
But isn't it nice? You said it was lovely.
It is lovely, but it doesn't need ironing, does it? Just hang it right and you'll be OK.
Oh, no, yeah, I can't iron a suit.
But I like T-shirt under jacket. I think that looks quite nice, as long as it's nice white washed T-shirt.
Yeah, washed.
Yeah.
Washed
Speaking
is
as the
good.
mother of 4 boys, you understand it wasn't always
yes.
that way.
Oh.
But, I mean, I tell you, you've got 4 boys and they're all at school and they all have to have shirts for this and gym shirts for that and other shirts for something else. You get very fed up with the ironing. I used to have to colour code them as well. All my kids were colour-coded. Their socks were colour-coded. Everything was. It was a nightmare.
That's going to take a bit of organisation. That's something only a woman could do, I think, without wanting to sound so, but being organised. Men aren't that organised.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, when you know anyone who's ever been military trained, they get organised. They know how to hang stuff in a wardrobe properly and stack things colour-coded and everything. So we could all be trained.
Yeah. We'll do military service for 12 months, that'd sort
National service, bring it back, I say. Oh, there's one to get me to. But actually, I've always thought it would be a good idea.
Yeah. Highway code.
Yeah, Highway Code comes into force today with 8 new rules coming into effect. The new guidance will affect all road users, including pedestrians and mobility scooter users, cyclists and motorcyclists, as well as vehicle drivers and horse riders, yes.
Well, that's just about everyone, isn't it? The rules will attempt to offer more protection to pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders. Of course, thousands of people who are either injured very seriously or killed on the roads every year. So in some respects, you can argue something has to be done.
Particularly in our cities.
But
well, our London reporter Alice Porter has more on what the new rules might mean for you.
Every year, thousands of pedestrians or cyclists are killed or seriously injured on Britain's roads. So part of these changes to the Highway Code is putting an emphasis on those driving bigger vehicles to have more responsibility to those who are more vulnerable on the roads, such as pedestrians or cyclists. So what does that mean for motorists? Well, going forward, there are 3 things you need to know from today. There's now a priority for pedestrians at crossings. So in drivers and also cyclists, when you reach a junction, that you need to give way to any pedestrian that wants to cross the road. So that's number 1. Number 2, there's now priority for cyclists when cars are turning. So for example, if I was in the car and I reached a junction and there was a cyclist next to me and I wanted to turn left or right, and the cyclist wanted to go straight on, I would need to wait for them to go past. So that's number 2. And finally, motorists are going to be encouraged to do the Dutch reach, which may sound a bit strange, but bear with me. When I'm in the car and I want to get out of it, the temptation is to use my right hand to open the door and get out. But the problem is, so often motorists don't look to see whether a cyclist is coming past, and it can be incredibly dangerous. The Dutch reach encourages people to use the hand on the opposite side of the car that they're on. So in this case, my left hand is the opposite hand. If I open the door with my left hand, it forces me to turn my body and open the door and look up and out to see if there are any cyclists going past. And that seemed to be a lot safer for cyclists.
Well, make of that what you will. I mean, the minute you talk about the use of the road, everybody's got a view, depending on how you use the road.
Yeah, but I mean, the interesting one, I think, was from the horse rider, Emma. It's dangerous on the roads. The cars don't give us any room. My friend was hit by a car a few weeks ago whilst out hacking.
And Tom says, regarding cyclists, they already seem to hold us hostage on the roads, holding up miles of traffic without a care in the world. It's simply bad manners. If I'm cycling and there are cars wanting to get past, I pull over and let them go. Yeah, you do notice the difference between some cyclists who are aware. Yes,
I think
manners.
that's the thing.
It comes down to manners.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Do stay with us here on GB News. We've got plenty more to come, including a look at the papers in just a few minutes.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 7:33. Actually, if I just wait 2
there
seconds.
There you go.
7:34. Very good morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We're live across the UK on both your TV and radio. Why are you laughing? Because I put on a posh voice.
You did put on a bit. I like it. I love it.
I don't normally do that, except when I answer the phone, you know. Yeah.
It's like working with Hyacinth Bouquet.
Yeah, I knew you'd bring her up. I knew you'd bring her up.
Let's look at the papers for you this morning. The Times says Sue Gray is extremely frustrated that her report was delayed and redacted because of the ongoing Met Police investigations.
The Guardian also looks into the Sue Gray report, saying that its release is imminent, yeah.
The Daily Mail has the outrage at the police over the number 10 probe shambles.
Shambles keeps coming up. The Daily Mirror accuses gas companies BP and Shell of profiting from the energy crisis to the tune of, wait for it, £900 a second.
Oof. Ouch. Let's go through the papers in a bit more detail then with former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and Labour councillor and donor Kevin Craig. Morning to you both once again. Dawn, let's kick off with the front of the Telegraph on energy.
Would you like me to do it in a terribly posh voice?
No, I'm sorry I slipped
barking up the wrong tree there, my love. In any case, this story is in all the papers, and I know we've had a lot of response on the programme today from people who are genuinely worried about their energy bills and how they're going to afford it. This is the Daily Telegraph. Energy bills to hit £1,900 from April. And ministers are currently urging to cut the VAT to ease the burden on households. Now, what's happening in April is that energy prices are capped at the moment. They're capped at £1,277, which means energy companies can't charge any more than that. Now, that cap is going up in April to £1,897. That's an increase of 48%. So when you take everything else into consideration that we have to pay out for, this is going to mean an awful lot of people are really, really going to be struggling. And this is on top of the VAT coming in, and also the green levies are going up there. Now, at the moment, green levies are between 15 and 25% of your energy bill. And there is also a call for this to be scrapped, or at least put on hold for a year until we get out of the pandemic crisis.
Why don't they... I tell you what, with all these options, which all sound the semi-controversial, getting rid of green tax, getting rid of the VAT, why don't they just not remove the energy cap? Or leave it as it is?
Well, quite. I mean, they say they can't.
Because if these companies are earning £900 a second, they can afford not to charge us the extra.
This is the issue with it, isn't it? And it's people are really suffering, as we've heard this morning already. And the companies just seem to be raking in the money still. It doesn't seem to make sense that you're making ordinary families who are really struggling with everything else. I mean, the inflation, everything is more expensive in the supermarket now. Absolutely everything. And people are really struggling. But the companies seem to be getting away with it still. It's frightening where we're going with this. And the government make £9 billion in taxes from our energy bills every year. So, but we've got to pay back where we were with the pandemic. But I think the company should be paying rather than the pensioners at home.
Yeah. Kevin, it almost makes you think what we need is a jolly good socialist government for a few years.
Well, you know, there is perhaps a reason that Labour is 38% in the polls versus 32% for the Conservatives. And I think on the energy thing is very topical because I think you're going to see the government actually, if they've got any sense, nicking that policy off Labour, right, where Labour's talking about levies on the energy companies. And if they've got any sense, they will.
But they seem to be very stubbornly saying no at the moment.
Well, I think that's going to change. You've got the MP for Harlow, very well-regarded Conservative, Robert Halfon, is saying to look at this in one of the papers today. So I think the government is... One of the things Boris Johnson and the people around him are saying is that if he gets through this, he's going to listen more. And there's going to need to... I know, Steve, you may raise your eyebrows, but, that's what they're saying. And I think listening on the cost of living and energy prices, otherwise he really will be toast.
I tell you what I think the problem is with politicians.
How long?
Go on. Well,
go on.
We've got 3 hours, 2.5 hours left. But no, they tend to, not all of them, but they tend to come, so those are the higher-ups, from a privileged background. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what they don't get, I think, is what life is like for most people.
Well, I think that's a fair point. And, I'm one of those people involved in politics whose mates are from all across the political spectrum. But I would say, Keir Starmer, who I think has had a bit of battering on here earlier this morning, does come from a very working class background, right? He knows what it's like not to have money in the house to pay energy bills, right? He gets that, and that never leaves you. I've got a very successful business now, grew up with an outside toilet. It never leaves you, right?
And why? Yeah, but I mean, if he's got this appeal and he does talk about this sort of working class background, why is he not? There's an open goal at the minute. Why are they only 6 points ahead?
Well, because I think Boris is a very charismatic politician. We know the viewers, this morning.
And Keir isn't.
Well, is he not? I think he's doing all right. He's 6 points ahead. The longer he's in the job, the better he gets. And whatever your politics, isn't it exciting, right? Maybe Boris will survive. Imagine a general election, him against Keir Starmer. That would be interesting, right?
You know what? I think Boris would win.
So do I. I think Boris would absolutely wipe
because Keir Starmer might have a working class background, but he doesn't engage with voters. He doesn't have...
What's your basis for that, Dawn? I know it's early in the morning, but where's that coming from?
Well, because he doesn't engage with the voters. He really doesn't see... He has a 6-point lead when, as you say, he's got an open goal. And he keeps booting it into row ZZ. This isn't even political. I would love an opposition in this country. I think everybody would, but we just don't have one.
Well, we hear this a lot. And again, I recognise that Boris Johnson won a fantastic election victory last time. A lot of that was because Labour put the wrong leader forward, right? But it hasn't been tested, right? An honest, serious, country-loving Labour leader at last, right, against Boris. That would be worth watching. And I think, Anne, it's probably too early to say, You're not convinced, are you, Anne?
Anyone fancy a general election soon?
He's got a charisma bypass, I think, Keir Starmer, like so many of them. If they could come up with somebody with a bit of charisma, Boris would have a fight on his hands.
Should you need charisma? Do you need charisma to be a good, solid politician and leader?
You need a charisma to win.
Well, you do need charisma, and this is going to get me a load of stick, right? But in the flesh, Keir Starmer is very engaging and charismatic, right? I don't think that's totally coming across yet on the airwaves. He's got time. He's 6 points ahead, and he's also honest. Right? And the reason why we're all so bored of this story about Capegate, Partygate is the story is politicians who do one thing, who say one thing and do another. And I think that matters to GBNews viewers and all, a lot of people. It's honesty.
Yeah. OK, let's move it on to the phone call that's going to happen between Boris and Putin.
Yeah, and I think, again, you see this morning a lot of interest from the viewers about, let's talk about the real news. And, on the front page of The Sun, on page 2, PM's going to be putting him right, get it? And it's about the showdown in the coming days. And The Sun reminds us, right, let's focus our minds. The Russia-Ukraine situation is the biggest threat to peace on the continent of Europe since World War II. This is, massive. And, Boris actually had, I think, one of his best performances on foreign policy in the last week when he was talking about the Ukraine situation. And this really actually is so pivotal to our country. And we do need to focus on this. And the Sun's leader...
Can I just be controversial?
Go on.
Because, I agree with you. I think it is absolutely crucial and pivotal and ultimately may end up costing some British lives along the way. Let's hope not.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer's not said much about it.
Well, I think...
No, he hasn't.
Well, I think what he has said on it is not getting through, because to be really brutal about it, the public don't care in moments of foreign policy crisis what the opposition says. Can any one of us remember what the Conservatives were saying when Blair was leading on foreign policy? No one's interested. Boris has got an 80-seat majority. He's in charge, and it's what he does in the cabinet room people care about.
The interesting thing with the whole situation with Russia at the moment is this could give Boris the bounce that he needs. He had the Brexit bounce, he had the vaccine bounce. If he sorts out a diplomatic response to Russia's behaviour, then he will get the bounce from that as well.
Well,
and I think that's what Keir does have to be worried about.
Well, I think all people, I hope, of their politics, left or right, will wish Boris Johnson and fellow leaders success on this, But you read the Sun leader, listen, this is serious. The Sun leader column, Vladimir Putin claims he has no offensive intentions in Ukraine. Judge for yourselves on page 10 and 11. Move over, comical alley. For brazen lies, Russia's gangster-in-chief cannot be beaten. This is serious.
Yeah, and even more serious is Russia supplies 36% of Europe's gas as well. They could just flick that switch. They don't actually need to invade anywhere. They could just turn the gas off.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous.
Apart from that,
you've got a headline about Sajid Javid.
I have, yes. This is well, depending on your political viewpoint. This is in the Times today, and GPs nationalised in Javid plan to reduce hospital admissions. Now, it's a very, very complicated system, the GP system in this country, set up when the NHS was set up. Basically, GPs are self-employed subcontractors to the NHS. They're not actually employed per se by the NHS. They run their own small business. And this plan is to get more of them on salaries paid for by the NHS to link GP surgeries more closely to the local hospitals. It's been given a trial run in Wolverhampton. I know it's very complicated.
Well, it is, but that sounds like common sense to me.
Well, don't be silly. Running the NHS on common sense. It's worked in Wolverhampton. Wolverhampton is the model, and basically the hospital there took over the GP surgeries. And the point is to cut down on emergency admissions to hospital. So therefore, the hospitals aren't under the crisis pressure we see every year. So in theory, it's a good thing. Doctors aren't that happy about it. They like their independence, and they get paid £155 a patient for a year with extras for hitting on targets for chronic conditions, etc., etc. Now I've picked this story.
That makes sense.
I've picked this story because during the pandemic, it was incredibly difficult to see a GP. And in some areas, it really still is. And a lot of people have suffered because of that. And in my area in East London, it's still very hard to get to see a GP. Yeah. So it does need reform. And I think the good thing to come out of this story is reforming the NHS is being looked at, and I think that's very important.
It's got to be a reform that the GPs are happy with, though, isn't it? Because they keep reporting that so many GPs are desperately unhappy and are leaving the NHS in droves.
Absolutely, yeah. And interestingly, even though they're saying this is not right for GPs, a lot of them now are already voluntarily becoming salaried under the NHS, rather than the pressure of trying to run their small business GP surgery.
But do you know what? Do you know what worries me about that? And it's honestly a very personal perspective. But I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I've always been seen at the hospital with a specialist. And recently, my GP has been pushing and pushing and pushing for me to be seen at the GP, where you're not then going to see a specialist.
Yeah, you're going to see.
And I've refused to do it. But now I know why they wanted it, because they'd make more money out of me.
Yeah.
They'd make profit out of me by doing that. Yeah. Now, that isn't good for my health.
They would be, no, absolutely.
Well, that shouldn't be the motivating factor anyway,
should it?
No.
It's a sad... If you're actually worried that's happening, that's an indictment, really. I mean, do you really think that might be the driving factor?
Well, if they're making money out of looking after chronic conditions per head...
And the vaccine rollout, they were being paid £35 bonuses, I think £35. I might be wrong on the actual amount, but the more vaccines they gave out, the more they were paid.
That's all right, though, because that worked.
No,
We like that.
absolutely, but at the cost of seeing other people.
Yeah.
Do you know, it really does
Concentrating
depend on where you live and how lucky you are in your local GP surgery as well. I've got nothing but good to say about my local one, but I just happen to have happened upon a really good surgery. I only moved there just recently. But I know other people have terrible stories.
But, I mean, do you know who your GP is? I mean, when I see a GP there, I mean, they're good. Don't get me wrong, they're very, very good. But if on those forms, put who's your GP? I've no idea.
No. Yeah. But, you know, the days where you had a family GP who actually knew your family are long gone.
Yeah, I know my GPs. I mean, is it just where I live? I don't know.
Maybe.
Sometimes, well, like I said, I think you can be very lucky or unlucky, just you know, where you happen to live and where your GP surgery is and how they run themselves.
I think, Anne, we're all moving in with you.
Well, no, because then you'll spoil it.
Where are we going?
I'm not telling you. Have we got time for one more newspaper?
I hope so.
What about the crime bill? How's that going?
Well, this is important because it's in the Financial Times on the page 3, but stay with me because the story talks about, and I think this is about law and order and honesty and decency and fairness, £100 billion that the National Crime Agency estimates has been channeled into the UK from countries like Russia and Turkey of dirty money, right? And basically there's this bill, economic crime bill, which the government have said in the past week that they're not going to prioritise, and now Conservative MPs are kicking back because they say this is important to everybody, right? We don't want to be a centre for foreign dirty money, especially all this chat about Russia going on. And I think even though this is a slightly niche story on the page 3 of the FT, everybody should care about this country being a centre of dirty cash from around the world. And I hope that the government listens to the various Conservative MPs and Lords saying they need to prioritise this. They'll get cross-party support. It's really important.
It's interesting. It is interesting. Look, we need to leave it there. Dawn, Kevin, thank you. I can tell you're a passionate man because you keep banging the desk.
Yes. Yes, if you could hear that, that's...
Yeah, well, it might drive you mad. Let us know if it's drive you mad or not. I don't know. I quite like the passion. I like the passion in it. I think it's good. But there you go.
Right, shall we tell you a few of today's headlines? Tensions continue to rise between Russia and Ukraine, as we've just been hearing, as the Prime Minister is set to visit the region in the coming days. Boris Johnson says he's determined to accelerate diplomatic efforts and will speak to President Putin over the phone. He's set to consider a range of options to alleviate Russian aggression, including fresh military deployments and bolstering NATO defences.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson could see the results of the highly anticipated Partygate inquiry as soon as this weekend, possibly. The police insist they haven't delayed its publication, having opened a criminal probe earlier this week.
And 2 people have been arrested following a stabbing of a teenage boy in Norwich yesterday evening. The teen was pronounced dead at the scene, and police say that a man in his 40s and a woman in her 30s were arrested shortly after in connection with that incident.
Major overhaul of the highway code comes into force today. Millions of us just unaware of the changes. The new rules aim to boost protection for cyclists and pedestrians.
And nearly a quarter of older people say they'll be forced to choose between heating and eating if bills continue to rise. That's according to the latest research by the charity Age UK. They also say that more than half of over 65s say they're going to have to heat their homes less as inflation and the cost of living rises.
A study has found lung abnormalities in long COVID patients who have breathlessness. It's causing a real amount of concern, actually. Oxford University have identified areas of damage in lungs. Doctors are hoping to find better treatments by better understanding the mechanisms driving the symptoms.
And just as you thought it was safe to go out, Storm Malik is set to batter Britain with winds of up to 80 miles an hour expected in some areas. Yellow weather warnings are in place across Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. And the Met Office are warning that the storm could cause damage to homes, power lines and transport.
Time for the showbiz this morning with Princess Stephanie Tetchy.
Morning.
I don't know why.
You've been promoted.
You've been promoted.
Swanning, yes.
You do swanning.
I wonder what you're going to call me next week.
Dame.
Oh, that is exciting stuff.
Look, Minnie Mouse is getting all woke.
Oh, gosh, just leave Minnie alone. Like, she's an iconic character. She's been around for almost 100 years. And this week, Disney decided to unveil Minnie wearing a trouser suit. Very different from her red and white polka dot. She's now wearing this blue, rather dull suit. And it's all in aid of, well, not in aid, well, it's all ahead of Disneyland Paris celebrating its 30th anniversary and also for Women's Month next month. It's been designed by Stella McCartney.
How has she designed that? How does that take any design?
That literally took about 2 minutes. Sorry, Stella. But again, a lot of Disney fans are like, can we stop trying to be too woke now? You guys are going a bit too far. This comes after earlier this week they've had to make changes to the live-action film remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs because they faced a lot of criticism from Peter Dinklage, who suffers from dwarfism himself. And he said, you guys are going a bit too far and you're changing the storyline. So now they've made this decision to axe all the dwarfs.
They haven't said what they're going to do. I mean, are there going to be 7 companions of some sort?
I don't know what they're going to do, but they've said they're going to be working closely with the dwarfism community to find out how they can make it appear better on TV. But the actors who they had originally cast are saying, well, we're out of a job now. You know, sometimes I think with Disney, they need to stick to what they're planning to do. It feels like they keep on giving in to any slight criticism
they even put, apparently, if you watch Disney Plus, on some of the movies now, they put out a warning beforehand saying that some of the representations of the characters, you know, might have been acceptable in the time, but they were wrong then and they're wrong now. You're talking about all sorts of characters in our favourite movies.
You know, I grew up as a child in the 90s and my mum let me watch all of these movies, and I don't think my mum would have let me watch that if she felt like it would be offensive. Obviously, I can't talk for every ethnic family out there, but I think what Disney's trying to do is highlight their flaws when necessary there might not be a problem, and they're actually stripping art. You know, art is supposed to be subjective, and I think they're just going a bit too far now.
Well, there's some things do make you uncomfortable if you watch some of those old movies, don't they?
Well, old movies, maybe, but I mean, not like the sort of the kids' stuff and the cartoony
I mean, Peter
stuff.
Pan on his island, you know, there was a tribe of Red Indians, they called them, and I don't know whether that would... You wouldn't make it like that now.
No, that's the thing. I think there's a difference now going forward. Movies are going to be made differently, cartoons are going to be made differently.
So has Peter Dinklage got a point then?
I personally didn't agree with him because I think the movie is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's not like they've just added in dwarfs where there's no mention of dwarfs. I personally feel like they should have kept it as it is.
I mean, I did Panto once. I was the Wicked Queen.
Oh, no, you didn't.
Oh, yes, I did. And the dwarves in that were, I mean, they were wonderful. They were like a trades union. They were very, very, you know, forceful community of people. But they looked forward to the Panto season every year because that's when they
made the money.
Yeah, they really did.
You get to see dwarves in programmes. You know, it would be different if...
Well, it would be called... You could view it as inclusion, couldn't you?
Totally. Like these dwarves that were supposed
And they were positive characters too, weren't they?
They're all, like, cheery, happy people that we want to see on screen.
Well, apart from Grumpy.
Yeah,
well,
gosh. We all like a bit of grumpiness, don't we, though?
Well, I bought my son a big thing of sweater thing from Disney that had a picture of Grumpy on it. It says Grumpy.
Yeah.
So there you are. No, it's... you can take wokery too far, can't you?
You can.
It's an interesting point, though. Get in touch. Let us know what you think about that one. We're out of time, Stephanie. But you are back later. We're going to shoehorn you in for a good 10 minutes.
There's lots to talk about, actually.
There is a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there's loads, actually. We've got plenty of your views coming up as well for you in just a few minutes. Everything you've been talking about, from energy to the highway code. First up, here's the weather.
Hello, good morning. Some very stormy weather across northern parts of the country this morning. Some very windy weather to come through the day today. An area of rain pushing southwards, but it will turn a little bit brighter later on. Now, we've got this cold front, some very tightly packed isobars, and it's this that's bringing some very strong winds across northern parts of the UK through the day on Saturday. Stay tuned to the latest forecast. Through this morning, we'll have widely gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps 70, possibly 80 miles an hour. The Met Office have issued an amber wind warning for northeastern parts of Scotland, where we could see some really damaging weather through the course of the day today. Now, skies will brighten through the day as this cold front slides southwards. Some sunny spells and a few showers feeding through, but very blustery throughout the afternoon, so certainly not feeling like 10 to 12 degrees on the thermometer. Even further south it will be milder, but there will be more of a breeze than we've been used to of late. Now, the worst of the winds will continue at first through Saturday evening before easing away, and then we have a ridge of high pressure building in, so what that means is the skies will clear. We'll see those winds easing right down, and that'll allow temperatures to take a bit of a tumble. So a cold start to the day on Saturday, quite a widespread frost, some pockets of ice out there as well. Temperatures in our rural spots will dip close to, if not a little bit below freezing. But a really different start to the day on Sunday. Plenty of sunshine out there first thing. Sunshine getting to work on that frost. But through the day, we will see the skies turn hazier across the north and west as that cloud starts to filter in. So a fine day for much of England and Wales, but a much wetter and windier picture for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland. The risk of some hill snow here as well. And later, as this area of low pressure feeds in, we will see some very strong winds starting to develop once again. So the Met Office have issued further warnings for Sunday's weather. As we take a look through the week, it stays fairly up and down. Those temperatures a little bit up and down too, perhaps a bit milder by Tuesday. Goodbye.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Morning to you. 8 o'clock, 29th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live with you across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Some people I know, of course, are catching up via the GB News app whilst travelling to work. And you could even be a Brit abroad, so we're here for you too. Love to hear from you this morning. So coming up on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
The Sue Gray report into Downing Street parties is imminent, apparently, amid anger that it could include significant redactions. We'll get reaction from the Labour front bench.
Also coming up, highway code changes come into effect today. Changes include having cyclists cycle in the middle of some roads and new fines for changing anything on your phone whilst driving.
And we'll have a look at the top showbiz stories, including that new look for Minnie Mouse.
There she is. That's their old look. And you can join in any of our discussions, do please, by emailing GBViews at GBNews UK or tweet us at GBNews.
Oh, and they're coming in thick and fast this morning. Look at all these reams of paper that we've got. Brady's on the Costa del Sol. It says, why is Stephen and Anne receiving reams of paper to read out emails? Every other company is trying to go paperless, but GB News seems to be trying to reverse this.
No. It's recyclable paper. But also, you can only depend on computers so far.
Yeah, and there are, frankly, so many emails coming through that we couldn't actually put them into the sort of the groups of the different areas that you're talking about. So, unfortunately, paper is the way forward when it comes to these.
I've caused a bit of a problem here by saying that I don't iron bedding. Jude says not ironing your bedding is just as bad as watching the wrong channel or not wearing a tie.
Jill says, I like to see presenters wearing ties. Some ties are beautiful. Carry on, Stephen.
I suppose, actually, for a man, the tie is you know, where you
She
show
want
off,
a bit
isn't
of
it?
colour.
Yeah.
She want a bit of colour.
Yes, that's true, so maybe.
Because I've only got 3 suits,
Try a
but I've got
cravat.
plenty of ties. A cravat?
Fancy cravat.
Oh, I don't
For a
think
bow tie,
so.
have you ever worn a bow tie?
Only with a dinner suit.
Oh, yeah, well, I wouldn't expect you to do that.
And I can't tie one.
I can.
It's one of them cheaty ones.
That, again, is being the mother of 4 boys. I've learned how to tie bow ties.
Oh, you must have a posh time, your boys.
Oh, well, they were always doing things with bow ties. It's showing off, isn't it?
Oh, showing off. Have we got any showy off stuff?
No.
Oh, no, not in this one.
I tell you what, though, we're still talking so much about where your priorities are and the government's priorities are and whether they're the same priorities. Patricia says you've got it exactly right. The energy bill rises, the potential issues with Russia and China, cuts to the army. These are the things we want covered on our news channel. I don't want to know, nor do I care anymore, what happened in 2020. Why are we wasting public money on a police investigation? Actually, that's very true. I read in one of the papers today it's £1.5 million.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Why would it cost that much? I just don't know. Yet, you see, on the other side of this, Wayne makes a very good point. Morning to you, Wayne. He says he's when it comes to Boris Johnson, he needs to go ASAP. My father died in William Harvey Hospital in Ashford, Kent in June 2020 from COVID-19, and we weren't allowed to visit him, but Boris and his party are having fun at the likes of us. It's a joke.
It's very uncomfortable, isn't it?
That is hugely uncomfortable. I mean, if your father's dying, Wayne's dad dying in June 2020, and he can't go and visit him.
That's what I mean. We were talking earlier about the fact that some people are just so fed up hearing about this blinking Partygate. On the other hand, if you've got an interest like that, you do want to see people held accountable, don't you? Well, the much-anticipated Sue Gray report is due imminently. How long are we going to say that for, though? Some facts about the parties at Downing Street might, though, be redacted from the final report.
Well, you remember that on Friday, the Met Police released a statement saying that certain details they would like to be omitted from the report to stop the possible prejudicial side of the current police investigations. The police, however, stringently denied delaying the actual release of the report. Well, it's the same thing if it's redacted, isn't it? I mean,
yes, it's effectively delayed.
Yeah.
And will we ever see what's behind the big black lines?
Yeah, possibly not. Let's talk to James Hanning, former deputy editor of The Independent on Sunday. Good to see you this morning. I mean, this does seem to be turning into a bit of a farce, doesn't it?
Well, it's been a farce for a while, hasn't it? I mean, it's just extraordinary. There's no sense of grip or discipline, or normally you go to the cabinet secretary or the Privy Council or something, and yet people are making it up as they go along. And today it's the turn of the police to get a kicking, but it's next week. Who knows who it'll be? It's chaos.
That's what everybody seems to be saying. This is farcical, this is a shambles. And it seems that they're almost kicking the blame for delaying this report from one person to another. But who is at the bottom of all this? Is it being choreographed?
Journalists are always accused of being conspiracy theories. I think this is cock-up rather than conspiracy. I think everybody's having their two penny worth, and Sue Gray's getting cross today. The Met were throwing their weight around earlier in the week and saying, no, don't publish this report. And then they said, yes, you can do. Now they're back saying, yes, you can do. But I think it's chaotic rather than anybody pulling strings from behind the scene, unless, of course, you exclude Dominic Cummings from that, because Dominic Cummings has clearly had it in for Boris for a long time, and of course one wonders, where some of these stories in the last few weeks have been coming from. Now, Dominic Cummings certainly has a motive, so. But I can't speak any further than that because I have no knowledge. So, but one can speculate.
But we do end up with this situation, and it's not to say I'm not voicing an opinion over whether Boris Johnson should go or not as a result of what has happened. However, we're quickly heading into a situation, aren't we, where, well, Sue Gray's career might be up for question, Cressida Dick's career might be up for question. Boris Johnson could be the last man standing.
Well, indeed. But who knows? I mean, it changes so quickly. Cressida Dick has been under fire from lots of newspapers for a while now. This has been, I suppose, her worst week yet, but who knows? It could get worse still. Sue Gray, we hear, is very cross. I mean, I was told that Sue Gray went to the police on Monday, having had a bit of a sort of relationship with them over the last few weeks. And she went to them on Monday and told them the gist of what was in her report, including, I'm told, that she had evidence. She'd heard. Well, she was going to say that there were young advisors asleep under their desks when the police came in the morning. Now, I mean, this is a completely bizarre situation. Now, anyway, it was stories such as that, I'm told, that Sue Gray told the police about, and then we've had this chaos the last few days. But now we're back expecting the report any minute now. We keep being told, and who knows? As you say, who knows? Boris could be the last man standing.
I mean, we keep using this word, imminent. The report is going to be with us imminent. It will be published any minute now. I mean, you're editing a paper for tomorrow morning. Will there be anything new by tomorrow? Probably not. Will we still be saying imminent Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week? How do you see it going?
Who knows? Who knows? I should correct you there, Anna. I'm not actually editing a paper. I used to be deputy editor of the Independent on Sunday. I'm not anymore. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all getting so fed up that I suspect there may be some briefing and so on, and the papers will be given a steer because they've been holding off and filling space and like nobody's business. And I suspect some friendly soul will give them a bit of a steer tomorrow, and then maybe we'll see it on Monday or Tuesday. But I think, as far as I understand it, it still has to go to Downing Street first, and it'll then be up to Downing Street when they put it out. So they will want to get their ducks in line before they put it out, I would have thought.
Redacted ducks.
Well, yeah, we're just going to have to see, aren't we? James Hanning, former deputy editor of The Independent on Sunday. Good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Yeah. And then it remains to be seen, when it is published, will it be worth reading? Or will every interesting part of it be redacted?
Well, and even so, I mean, not to shed any light on or any stain on the character of the people writing it, but you never quite know with these things. How independent are they? I mean, I just don't know.
And if there are reports of young Downing Street people asleep under the desks, does that go to how hard they were working in an extraordinary time, or does it go to the chaos that might have been prevalent inside?
Oh, is any of that illegal? Or, against the rules
or even
at the
relevant
time?
to Partygate?
Yeah.
Don't know.
Who knows? But it does sound chaotic, which is not a good look for Downing Street.
What's your view? Give us your view. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Let's bring you up to date with the other headlines this morning. And tensions continue to rise between Russia and Ukraine as the Prime Minister is set to visit the region in the coming days. Boris Johnson says he's determined to accelerate diplomatic efforts and will speak to President Putin over the phone. He's set to consider a range of options to alleviate Russian aggression, including new military deployments and bolstering NATO defences.
2 people have been arrested following a stabbing of a teenage boy in Norwich yesterday evening. The teen was pronounced dead at the scene. Police say a man in his 40s and a woman in her 30s were arrested shortly afterwards.
A major overhaul of the highway code comes into force today. There are concerns that millions of us just don't know what's happening. The new rules aim to boost protection for cyclists and pedestrians.
And some people with long COVID who suffer with breathlessness could have hidden damage to their lungs. The pilot study's been going on by scientists at Oxford University. They've used some sort of special gas to identify lung abnormalities that aren't picked up during routine scans. A larger, more detailed study is underway now to confirm the results and better understand how to treat it.
If you're looking out the window right now or driving along, Storm Malik is set to batter Britain with winds of up to 80 miles an hour expected in some areas today. There are yellow weather warnings across parts of Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland. The Met Office is warning the storm could cause damage to homes, power lines and transport.
Now, we've been talking a lot about Boris Johnson and all of those names involved, like Sue Gray and Cressida Dick. And up comes another name this morning.
Yes, Donald J. Trump, who's dropped the biggest hint yet that he'll be running for president again in 2024, after he was caught calling himself the 45th and 47th president whilst he was out on, guess where, a golf course.
Of course. And we wondered whether he was just stirring it or whether he really means it. He hasn't actually officially announced a third presidential campaign, although he has hinted on multiple occasions that he would run again in 2024. The former president did say in November 2021 that he will probably wait until the next midterm elections before declaring his run. He's going to sort of take the temperature of the country.
Well, let's talk to Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes, campaign advisor for the Trump victory in 2020. Good to see you this morning. I mean, do we think this is actually happening? Is he serious about going forward in 24?
I think everyone wants to know that, but actually, let me tell you what Trump has been doing, because it could be earlier than 2024 and not because the election will be overturned. Trump has been endorsing candidates in each of the different states. We're kind of fed up with the rhinos, which are Republicans in name only. And the other thing is that what people don't understand is that the U.S. is a republic. And in that, you have to think of it like we're 50 different countries. And so he wants to really support state legislatures and secretaries of state so that a lot of the problems that happened in 2020 can get cleared up. But this is the talk that has been going on for 6 or 7 months. And that is, right now, 29 Democrats in the House have said they're not running again. The prediction is we're going to take the House and the Senate. They're talking about Trump being the Speaker of the Senate, and then he will be able to impeach Biden and Harris, and he will be able to take over because he'll be third in line to do that. And this is a lot of the conservative commentators have been talking about this with a lot of detail. Dan Scavino, who handles his social media, keeps sending hints out to us. We get messages in circuitous ways, but don't jump to 2024. I really think what we have to watch is what's going on in the States.
Forgive me, Jan, for jumping in, but I can't help but reflect, because we're talking so much about Russia at the moment. If this was some sort of strategy that Vladimir Putin had used in the past to try and retain or regain a position, we'd be calling it totally corrupt, wouldn't we?
Well, see, you're jumping ahead and not looking at it from the perspective of the U.S. The fact is that people want to recruit him to be the speaker. I'm not saying that that is Trump's plan, but the conservative people have been talking about that because the Speaker of the House does not have to be an elected official. So all I'm saying is watch what's happening in the states. Watch the people that Trump is endorsing. Watch after the midterms what happens, because if we take the House, then things are going to turn upside down amongst our whole political situation.
But so what you're saying is that Donald Trump could be Speaker of the House without being elected to that position, then try to get the president and the vice president impeached, so he would become 47th president of the United States without actually being voted in.
Okay, now, Nancy Pelosi, who's Speaker of the House right now, is third in line for the presidency. So that is with our Constitution. I am not saying that Donald Trump has said this. What I am saying is that a lot of the people in the Republican Party are working very hard to support American first candidates for us to take the House and the Senate, and this is what they would like to see. But this has been very serious talk in D.C. and around the country for about 6 or 7 months, and a lot of the conservative commentators constantly talk about this being, maybe it's a hopeful possibility, maybe it's a real possibility, but the most important thing is to watch the people that he is endorsing, because he's got an enormous amount of power, and he has the intention of, which we would like, to get rid of the rhinos, the Republicans in name only. They're part of the globalists, the uniparty, and they've really betrayed the citizens that they represent.
But Jan, this is insidious, isn't it? I mean, this is almost as though there are members of your party who will do absolutely anything and never stop plotting to get him back in power somehow. But this doesn't sound right, does it?
Well, you see, don't take it negatively. I mean, the fact is that right now we have what some people consider an illegitimate president. I just think he's a little
I mean, Jan, no one with any sense is calling it an illegitimate presidency. I mean, the facts are out there. Come on.
Well, I think you've had Steve Bannon on GBNews, and he has very clearly called it that. But let's not focus on that part. But let's also not judge it as insidious. What we really need to do, and what we need to watch Trump do, is if we can take over the House and the Senate. That is the most important thing. And then to watch what the people in power in Washington are going to do.
I think you've actually left us almost speechless. It seems as though that any means to get President Trump back into the White House, anything is justifiable in your terms, and yet this doesn't seem morally right.
Sorry, Anne, that's your interpretation, and it's a negative slant. All I'm saying is that there is a possibility. There is another reason for this, and that is, you can go to Wikipedia, and 1871, the British, the Vatican, and the U.S. became the U.S. corporation. Trump eliminated that, and right now we are finally going back to our Constitution. We have been under Admiralty law. We are going back to common law. And things are going to change. We don't know. All of it hasn't fully come out, but you can find these things explained considerably and legitimately on the web with this. And I would really encourage your viewers to do that and not pass judgment of it's insidious and, oh, you'll do anything to get him back in. I am explaining to you what is going on in the States. I'm explaining to you that there is a movement for America first. And I am saying that there is a possibility both on the Constitution and if we take over the House and the Senate to see what our politicians do.
But you talk about America First candidates. I mean, is it really putting America first? I mean, whether Donald Trump got back in by that method that you were talking about, all waiting till 24 and running and winning a presidential campaign. I mean, what we saw last time is the United States being absolutely polarised, a divided nation. Now, how is that beneficial for the United States moving forward?
I know that you have this impression that we're a divided nation because that's a lot of what our fake news does. And William Casey, who was the CIA director, said, "We know our CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, we know that our disinformation is working when people believe our lies. Operation Mockingbird went before Congress because the CIA placed CIA agents within our press to do the disinformation. So step back a moment. You've got to look at the citizen journalists to understand what's going on. And I don't think that you can judge that. Now, there is an enormous amount of grassroots effort going on, and we think we've got about 2/3 of the country that's supporting. There are so many Democrats that are switching over because they don't. This is what the globalists are doing. The Chamber of Commerce, corporations, they don't care about the little people. You're not covering how horrible our open border is and what that is doing. It has turned every city into a border town. They are flying these illegal aliens in the middle of the night and dropping them off in cities. And these are some of the problems that we're dealing with. So America first, immigration, bringing manufacturing back, not going along with the globalists, making sure that our people, meaning our young people who have graduated, are the ones that get employed instead of big business that wants all of the cheap labor at the expense of our own citizens.
Yeah, Jan, we think our politics is complicated sometimes, but talking to you has convinced us that maybe it's even more difficult to understand yours. Thank you so much for joining us. Really interesting to hear your take on whether we'll ever see a President Trump again and how he'll do it. But that sounds almost anti-constitutional to me.
Yes, by the back door is... Surely that can't be right. It might be constitutionally possible, but it can't be right.
And it's also very interesting, if you look at Trump the man, he was a flamboyant president, he was a sort of lead from the front type person. You can't see him knowing enough or being the sort of person who could take on the role of Speaker of the House. That's somebody usually who absolutely knows their constitutional law, who's an expert in the Constitution and in government. Is that really Donald Trump?
Let us know what you think. Stay with us, though. We've got plenty more to come, including a closer look at the new highway code changes. First, here's the weather.
Hello, good morning. Some very stormy weather across northern parts of the country this morning. Some very windy weather to come through the day today. An area of rain pushing southwards, but it will turn a little bit brighter later on. Now, we've got this cold front, some very tightly packed isobars, and it's this that's bringing some very strong winds across northern parts of the UK through the day on Saturday. Stay tuned to the latest forecast. Through this morning, we'll have widely gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps 70, possibly 80 miles an hour. The Met Office have issued an amber wind warning for northeastern parts of Scotland, where we could see some really damaging weather through the course of the day today. Now, skies will brighten through the day as this cold front slides southwards. Some sunny spells and a few showers feeding through, but very blustery throughout the afternoon, so certainly not feeling like 10 to 12 degrees on the thermometer. Even further south, it will be milder, but there will be more of a breeze than we've been used to of late. Now, the worst of the winds will continue at first through Saturday evening before easing away. And then we have a ridge of high pressure building in. So what that means is the skies will clear. We'll see those winds easing right down, and that'll allow temperatures to take a bit of a tumble. So a cold start to the day on Saturday, quite a widespread frost, some pockets of ice out there as well. Temperatures in our rural spots will dip close to, if not a little bit below freezing. But a really different start to the day on Sunday. Plenty of sunshine out there first thing. Sunshine getting to work on that frost. But through the day, we will see the skies turn hazier across the north and west as that cloud starts to filter in. So a fine day for much of England and Wales, but a much wetter and windier picture for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland. The risk of some hill snow here as well. And later, as this area of low pressure feeds in, we will see some very strong winds starting to develop once again. So the Met Office have issued further warnings for Sunday's weather. As we take a look through the week, it stays fairly up and down. Those temperatures a little bit up and down too, perhaps a bit milder by Tuesday. Goodbye.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It's 8:28. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and your radio.
The Highway Code is changing from today with 8 new rules coming into effect. Do you know any of them? The new guidance will affect all road users, including pedestrians, mobility scooter users, cyclists and motorcyclists, as well as vehicle drivers and horse riders.
Ooh, yeah, they hope to offer better protection to pedestrians and cyclists. Of course, the numbers of people who are killed or seriously injured on Britain's roads every year is shockingly high. Let's talk to the president of the AA, Edmund King. Morning to you, Edmund. Is this fair on motorists?
Yeah, good morning. I think it is fair that the Highway Code should be revamped. And what it tries to do is give a hierarchy of road users. So those that are most vulnerable are at the top. So they would be pedestrians. Then you've got cyclists, horse riders, motorbike riders. Then you've got cars, vans and trucks. And what it's trying to say is that each category of road user should have ultimate responsibility and not cause harm to others. So obviously, that makes sense. 141 cyclists were killed on the roads last year, more than 4,000 injured. Some 5 people every day actually die on the road. So it's trying to say, look, the roads are there, they're there to be shared. So it tries to clear up some misconceptions. So it makes it clear when you overtake a cyclist, if you're in a vehicle, you should give 1.5 meters gap at speeds up to 30 miles an hour. If you're overtaking a horse, you should slow down to under 10 miles an hour and actually give a 2-meter gap. Now, most of these things are actually common sense. I mean, it's interesting. I actually went out last weekend to watch this hierarchy in practice and went out on a bike. And actually, a lot of the things I did see happening. A truck driver waited at a junction. There were 2 pedestrians who didn't know whether they could cross or not. The truck driver basically waited there, beckoned to the pedestrians, they went across. I was on a bike, I gave way to a horse because I didn't want to frighten the horse, etc. So a lot of it is common sense, but some of the headlines perhaps have indicated otherwise.
I think what a lot of people are worried about is that any new change in the Highway Code is going to sort of pit the motorists against the cyclists. 'Twas ever thus. People even change their character when they get out of the car they've driven all week and become cyclists at weekends. So what are the most important things that either party should know?
Yeah, I mean, I think on that point, though, it is interesting because, you know, we're all pedestrians. 90% of cyclists actually are drivers, and many drivers also cycle. So ironically, we are the same people. So it is a bit odd that you sometimes get this tribal system on the road. But I think in terms of the changes, I think the biggest change is the one that says, if you're approaching a junction and turning, say, left onto a side road, and if there is a pedestrian crossing, you should give way, which you would normally do, because if there's a pedestrian in the road, you would give way. But the change here, it says, if there's a pedestrian crossing or waiting, the driver should give way. Now, a driver should always be alert, but the previous highway code didn't actually say give way unless they started to cross the road. So that is open to interpretation. If you pull across onto a residential road and there are 3 schoolboys waiting there, are they having a chat? You know, are they playing on their phones, or are they waiting to cross? So I think that one perhaps is slightly ambiguous. The other really interesting one, Anne, do you know what the Dutch reach is?
No.
The Dutch reach.
Like the boarding house reach or something.
Well, you were making the right movement. Yeah. The Dutch reach is when you're in the car, if you're the driver and you stop, before you exit the car, you open the door with your left hand, so the hand away from the door. And what that means is that you then look over your shoulder and you can see if there's a cyclist, if there's a pedestrian, if there's a horse rider. So it's to prevent those episodes of dooring. There was a famous one with our ex-Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, a couple of years ago in Westminster, when he just opened a car door and it took out the cyclist. So the Dutch reach is now part of the highway code. But the reason I say that is many of these things haven't really been publicised. And normally when you have major safety changes, the breathalyzer, compulsory seatbelts, you have major campaigns, the clunk click every trip campaign.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we haven't had those campaigns yet. There will be a campaign launched in about 2 weeks' time on radio and social media. But normally it's best practice to have your awareness campaigns before the regulations actually come into play.
Yeah. It's just lots of things this morning. A confusing mess. Oh, I'm not going to do that. I'll tell you that.
Well, it does mean you're facing the traffic that could come into your door. Well, it makes sense, but...
Well, maybe, but I won't be doing it. Edmund King, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you from the AA. Let's talk to Tony Doyle, Founding Director of Tour of Britain and former President of British Cycling. Morning to you. But do you agree with everything that's being outlined in these changes?
Yeah, I mean, as Edmund was saying, it's basically common sense. So the more vulnerable road users are being protected.
Does that include... I mean, does it make a cyclist more vulnerable or less vulnerable when on a country road, for example, they're meant to cycle in the middle of the lane?
No, you've misread how the highway code sits. What it says is that when the road's narrow or when you're overtaking parked vehicles, that you should ride out in the middle of the road, and if you're approaching a junction, so that you're visible to the cars behind. It doesn't mean that you ride in the middle of the road under normal circumstances.
Do you think most of the country's cyclists are aware of these changes in the highway code and have already genned up on it, or don't you think they know?
I think a lot of the cyclists are aware, because one of the most dangerous things is that when cars are overtaking, they do come and whiz past the cyclist too close. And so a lot of people who ride bikes have had very close calls. So the fact that we're now saying to other road users, to motorists, that they have to allow 1.5 meters before they overtake means it's protecting cyclists, and it's telling the motorists to perhaps slow down and wait till it's clear there's no oncoming traffic before they go past. But it's all about respect and courtesy, Anne, and that's what's lacking.
Yeah, well, respect and courtesy, I mean, absolutely right, and everyone should apply that to each other when it comes to using the roads. Part of the problem, part of the reason drivers get so annoyed with cyclists is the sort of undertaking or zipping round and through sort of stationary traffic, ignoring traffic lights and zebra crossings. I mean, cyclists really need to show as much respect as they're asking for, don't they?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if cyclists obeyed the rule of the roads, and if motorists did, then we wouldn't be having the problems that we do. You know, the trouble is that we all need to sort of slow down a little bit, all need to calm down, and when we get behind the wheel of a car, you know, we're not king of the road, we're just another road user, and respect pedestrians crossings, protect mobility cyclists, and you know, watch out for cyclists on two wheels.
Do you agree with Edmund King there that what we need is a really good public information campaign, and we need it now?
Yeah, I mean, the sooner the better. There's been a lot of headlines that have jumped out where people have sort of not fully understood and saying that the cyclist is going to be king of the road. You know, that's not the case. Cyclists, motorcyclists, pedestrians, drivers, lorry drivers, you know, we all share the same road. Let's all be a little bit more considerate of each other, and let's try and reduce the number of accidents and the number of near misses.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, well, that's the key, isn't it? Let's sort of keep those accidents down and fatalities down, obviously. Tony Doyle, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you with that cycling perspective.
Of course, there have been several places in Britain where they've experimented and they've stuck with it. Roads that have no signs or anything like that, and the cars have to respect the cyclists, have to respect the pedestrians, because everybody is making their own way along it.
Ooh.
Same roads, they've done it a bit in Oxford. I bet if you're watching, yeah, there are places that used to have big roundabouts now where you simply have to make your own way. And as a car, you have no more right to do anything than the pedestrian who's walking alongside you, probably, or in front of you, or the cyclist. So you have to really, really take it slow and just sort of wait. And
sort of a bit counterintuitive.
No,
but if
apparently it really works.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh,
well, if you've got one of those where you live, love to hear how it works in your area. GB Views at GBnews.uk.
Stay with us, though. Plenty more to come, including a good look through the papers in a couple of minutes.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 8:41. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, live across the UK, on your TV and on the wireless.
Yeah, wireless. We'll take a look at today's front pages. The Times claims that Sue Gray is extremely frustrated that her report was delayed and redacted due to ongoing Met Police investigations.
The Guardian looks at that report, saying that its release is imminent, which is the word of the day.
Oh, yeah. The Eye also reports that Sue Gray is in the final stages of releasing her findings.
The Independent has the same line, but says that, looking at the more serious allegations, which may have been removed. Yeah. We just don't know yet if stuff is being redacted or not.
And the Daily Mail leads with outrage at the police over Number 10 probe shambles.
Yeah, let's see what our guests make of all of that. Former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and Labour councillor and donor, Kevin Craig. Good to see you both this morning. Rather than kick off with that I know we're thinking of, Dawn, let's go with something a little bit more serious, should we? The Mail, Emma Raducanu.
Yes.
Because this is, I mean, the whole stalking thing is hugely worrying, I think.
Hugely. This is a Mail exclusive. This is obviously tennis champ Emma Raducanu. Says she no longer feels safe in her own home after a stalker visited 3 times and stole her father's shoe as a souvenir. This is a court has told. This chap has been found guilty, is waiting sentence, so we can talk about it. But basically, it's just a horrific story. She's constantly looking over her shoulder. Now, she doesn't feel safe in her own home, and this chap developed an obsession with her and would sort of walk 23 miles from his home in London to hers and leave little notes for her, stole her father's tennis shoe, thinking it was actually hers, as a souvenir, and over Christmas actually once turned up at her house with a box of fairy lights and decorated the tree in the front garden. Oh. It's very, very spooky.
I tell you what I find very sad about it is that there are other pictures of Novak Djokovic out and about in Montenegro, I think, at the moment, and he's surrounded by heavies. And I think when you get in, which he won the US Open, when you get to that level of stardom, you can't live a normal life.
You have to.
No.
But, you know, there's a shocking thing. I mean, obviously, Emma is a celebrity and she's very well known. So, I mean, it's an awful story. But you know, Anne, 1 in 5 women under the age of 16, over the age of 16 in this country, have experienced stalking. And it's astonishing.
Well, it can lead, there's so many cases of it leading to proper intimidation and attacks and murder and all the rest of it. It's really worrying.
In the latest year that we have statistics for, 60 British women were killed by men that reported to the police for stalking. 60 lives lost for this. And there's a recent case, obviously, in Maida Vale, where she's been named today, the victim, Yasmin Chakeffi. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. She was stabbed to death by her ex-husband, and people will be aware of the story because the car driver drove into them. That's an ongoing case, so we can't talk too much about that. But she'd reported constantly the fact that she was being harassed and stalked by her ex to the police, and she lost her life. It's just a horrific situation that needs to be looking at. And Emma,
she doesn't need that sort of pressure either.
No, absolutely not. But she's talking out about it, and obviously, it's, you know, hopefully it raises awareness now, so we can stop this happening to other women.
Yeah, let's hope so. Kevin, in the Times, e-scooters, are they a bane of your life?
Well, I mean, it seems a bit trivial given what we've just talked about. But earlier this morning, Anne picked up this story about. What's happening is that in University College London is starting something they hope to roll out nationally. They're working with companies like Tia, Lime, and it's about how can you make e-scooters less dangerous for people who've got hearing issues, visual impairment, because they're quiet, obviously, right? Same problem as with electric vehicles. 130 pedestrians were injured last year by e-scooters. And so, guess what? They're solving it, as Anne inferred earlier. And they're working on this study to create a sound which will resonate to the human ear that e-scooters will have in the future.
Well, that's not going to be irritating.
Well,
have you got it?
Yeah, it's. If I read this correctly, e-scooters in the future will sound like this. It's the sound of a repeated cymbal in a tuba.
Is it?
It's going to be good, isn't it?
I feel like an idiot on one of those.
Well, it's probably...
Are our pavements going to be full of that noise? In which case, there'd be noise pollution, wouldn't there? You wouldn't.
Well, good point, Anne, right? Because they say here they hope to create a distinctive sound that does not dramatically lead to increased noise pollution.
But
of all these accidents they talk about, are they caused by people not hearing the scooter or by scooters being driven by irresponsible teenagers?
I suspect it's more of the latter. This doesn't say, but what it does say here, excuse me, tapping the table, which I won't do again, it is illegal, although you wouldn't believe this, or from what we see in life, to ride privately owned scooters on public roads. That's not what we see, is it?
Can't we just ban them, full stop? That would solve all of these issues, sorry.
But look out for that noise.
Yeah. Do it again.
Go on, Stephen, have a go.
No, I'm not.
Go on.
Love it.
But, I mean, we had all this with the introduction of electric cars. You remember people kept saying, it's so awful, you can't tell when a car's coming around the corner. But we seem to have got past that, don't we? We've learned to live with them and look out for them.
Yeah. I'll tell you what we can't learn to live with is cost of living.
Dawn,
yes,
because never ending.
This is going to be absolutely crippling if all this continues to go up.
Absolutely. This is The Guardian today, and obviously as well as national insurance going up, the energy bills going up. Supermarket staples from pasta to coffee and crisps are going to cost us all more. Not just inflation, but the cost of production going on as well because of the shortages and the sort of the production is changing for the green levy, so we all have to pay more for it. But everything, absolutely everything is going up by literally sometimes up to as much as 20-25%. I mean, this is, basics, pasta, margarine, milk, sausages. You like a nice sausage, Stephen? I know. Coffee, that caffeine hit we get in the morning. I mean, crisps. I mean,
it's not expensive enough already.
Well, Quaver's my favourite, gone up by 8.5%.
And they put less in a bag.
I know. Yeah. Are you counting them?
So is it the cost particularly of of processed food, because it's the cost of processing? Well, so if we all bought more vegetables, would that be an answer?
Well, absolutely, vegetables going up as well, I'm sorry there. But, I mean, taking it down to milk, I mean, there's been a 24% increase in the cost of producing milk since January 2020, and the price always gets passed on to
the customer.
To the customer.
Who's already suffering from cold.
Oh, dear.
Rising fuel bills.
Oh, it's all doom and gloom this morning,
isn't
it?
It is doom and gloom.
Happy Saturday.
We need to cheer things up a little bit. I don't think we can do that just yet, though. Dawn Neeson, Kevin Craig, good to see you both
this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, school absences due to COVID remain high after the UK lifted Plan B measures this week. 1 in 8 pupils were off school on the 20th of January, whilst a quarter of schools had 15% of their teachers and leaders off work.
Well, let's talk to the Shadow Schools Minister, Stephen Morgan, who joins us now. Good morning to you. I mean, these are very worrying figures, especially when for these young people, we're trying to get their education back on track.
You're absolutely right. And I want to just pay tribute to school teachers and staff across the country that have worked tirelessly during the pandemic to try and keep schools open. I want to see schools remain open because I think that's the best place for children to learn and play. But these latest figures are a worry, both in terms of pupil absences, but also teachers that are off. And I think that's partly because the government's plan is not working for schools. We've been calling for better measures around ventilation, on vaccination and testing. And I fear that the government have sort of left children as an afterthought in this pandemic. And that's why we need to see action taken. On ventilation, for example, the SAGE committee warned 20 months ago that ventilation would be an issue in schools. And what the government have proposed will just benefit 1 in 4 schools. The Bradford pilot, where they're looking at how this will work out, won't report till October of this year. And that's just not good enough. And that's why I'm going to continue to raise these issues in Parliament.
When we were told that Plan B measures were going to be lifted, they did actually predict that things might look worse for a couple of weeks in schools. Do you not think maybe this will actually right itself?
Well, we've got to obviously look at the data and see what happens next, but I am really concerned by absence data. The government have not got a proper plan to support children, and that's why we've been calling in Parliament for action around ventilation, testing and also ventilation. On testing, we know that that's the way out of the pandemic, and we've got to make sure supplies get to schools as quickly as possible. But it is a concern, and we need to make sure children are in school and learning together.
Look, can I turn your attention to 1 or 2 other matters? Because obviously, I mean, in political terms, the Labour Party's got an absolute open goal with the government at the moment. There is so much chaos, whether you think the Prime Minister should go or stay, there's still a lot of chaos. Why is the Labour Party not doing better with this? I mean, the latest YouGov poll has you just 6 points ahead. You should be marching ahead, shouldn't you?
Well, the last election, we saw one of our worst results ever. So we've got a big mountain to climb, and certainly polls are starting to look in our favour, but much more needs to be done. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can still hear you, but your picture's frozen at the moment. Hopefully it will right itself. Oh, I don't know. We might have lost you completely now. We'll see. We'll just give you a couple more seconds to see if we can get that signal going again.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no, not at the moment.
Can you hear us, Stephen?
I can, but apologies, it does look like I've...
Oh, well,
So,
well, yeah, don't worry. It's not a bad freeze.
And everybody.
So you look all right. You look all right. But I mean, is there an issue with Keir Starmer here? Well, I mean, he doesn't seem to cut through to voters. He doesn't have the necessary appeal, does he, to be the next Prime Minister, to really make the most of this?
So I was...
No.
We were hearing from people that have voted Tory all their lives that are...
No, I'm afraid we've lost the signal. We'll try and get Stephen Morgan back for you. I want to ask him where he is. He looks as though he's in a school art room.
It's probably his very nicely designed kitchen or something.
Oh, it could be, yes. It's just that they looked as though there was a sort of bit of work of art at the side that might be...
But it is this whole... They talk about in politics, as you'll have heard many times, Anne, that parties don't win elections, governments lose them. Well, on that basis, the Labour Party should be doing better than it is. Because the government's, having a lot of heat at the moment. There's a lot of concern. There's a lot of things that haven't been... And whether you blame that on COVID and the levelling up agenda not happening or whatever it might be, the government is not in a good position at the moment. And therefore, Labour should be really capitalising on that. But it isn't happening. Not in the way that those figures are nowhere near what they need to be.
It's interesting you say that. Parties don't win elections, governments lose them. I would just say maybe when New Labour was voted in, that was a party that did win an election. I know the government was fairly weak at the time, but that was such a refreshing and new movement, and it was exciting for a lot of people. I think they probably did.
Yeah, no,
win
I
that election.
I think that's a fair point, but isn't it interesting that excitement and that the most successful Labour government there's ever been, the most successful Labour leader there has ever been, is now vilified.
Non grata in his own party, yes.
Which is...
And people were even campaigning to have his knighthood rescinded. Yeah.
I mean, so it's an extraordinary situation. But for politics to work correctly, for democracy to work in this country, you've got to have, well, a government doing what a government does and a strong opposition. And we're not there yet.
They always used to say, didn't they, that what brings down a Labour government is usually money problems, money scandals. What brings down a Tory government is sleaze of some sort. It's always the way. And they say if you live long enough, you see the cycle going round again and again and again. I wonder if that's still true.
Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting? In the meantime, let's run through one or two things that you've been getting in touch about this one. Highway code. Wendy says, if the new highway code is about cyclists, isn't it time they were answerable to the law as well as motorists and motorcyclists? Any cyclist who commits a misdemeanour is utterly untraceable. At the very least, they must be registered, wear high-vis helmets.
But the argument always, again, was that the motorists have to have a licence to drive on the road. You have to have a licence. The rest of us have a right to be on the road.
Yeah.
Including cyclists.
Yes.
As it is at the moment.
Which is interesting. Though somewhat, when I was at sixth form college, which is 2 or 3 years ago now, there was someone I knew did get pulled over by the police for being drunk in charge of a bicycle, cycling home.
Well, I suppose you can be drunk, just in charge. You can get done for jaywalking, can't you? Irresponsibly wandering into the road, can't you? I think so.
I don't know. Oh, well,
interesting one for you.
Keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GBNews. All the headlines coming up for you. But here's the weather.
Hello, good morning. Some very stormy weather across northern parts of the country this morning. Some very windy weather to come through the day today. An area of rain pushing southwards, but it will turn a little bit brighter later on. Now, we've got this cold front, some very tightly packed isobars, and it's this that's bringing some very strong winds across northern parts of the UK through the day on Saturday. Stay tuned to the latest forecast. Through this morning, we'll have widely gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps 70, possibly 80 miles an hour. The Met Office have issued an amber wind warning for northeastern parts of Scotland, where we could see some really damaging weather through the course of the day today. Now, skies will brighten through the day as this cold front slides southwards. Some sunny spells and a few showers feeding through, but very blustery throughout the afternoon, so certainly not feeling like 10 to 12 degrees on the thermometer. Even further south, it will be milder, but there will be more of a breeze than we've been used to of late. Now, the worst of the winds will continue at first through Saturday evening before easing away. And then we have a ridge of high pressure building in. So what that means is the skies will clear. We'll see those winds easing right down, and that'll allow temperatures to take a bit of a tumble. So a cold start to the day on Saturday, quite a widespread frost, some pockets of ice out there as well. Temperatures in our rural spots will dip close to, if not a little bit below freezing. But a really different start to the day on Sunday. Plenty of sunshine out there first thing. Sunshine getting to work on that frost. But through the day, we will see the skies turn hazier across the north and west as that cloud starts to filter in. So a fine day for much of England and Wales, but a much wetter and windier picture for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland. The risk of some hill snow here as well. And later, as this area of low pressure feeds in, we will see some very strong winds starting to develop once again. So the Met Office have issued further warnings for Sunday's weather. As we take a look through the week, it stays fairly up and down. Those temperatures a little bit up and down too, perhaps a bit milder by Tuesday. Goodbye.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on the 29th of January and it's a Saturday. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're delighted to be with you this morning and we're live across the whole of the UK and your TV and your radio, and you may be catching up on the app as well. You could perhaps be a Brit abroad because we're just all over the world now. Coming up for you this morning.
The Sue Gray report into Downing Street parties is apparently imminent, amid anger that it could include significant redactions. We'll get reaction from the Labour front bench.
Also coming up, we've been hearing over the course of the show about changes to the highway code. We'll get the details from our reporter, Alice Porter.
And a look at the weekend's top showbiz stories, including a new look for Minnie Mouse. That's her old look.
Well, that's the
very old.
That's the very old look where she had a blue skirt on, and then she went all polka dot.
Yeah,
and now
polka dot with those awful yellow shoes.
Yes.
They ought to take her out of those awful yellow shoes. But anyway,
put her in
Stella
black
McCartney's
ones.
had a go at her image.
It's dreadful.
Interesting.
She's got a pair of gym jams on.
Yes, exactly. It's meant to be a pantsuit, but it does look like gym jams. Anyway, you can join in on any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews.
Talking of suits,
yeah.
dressing smartly is not a bad thing. Wendy from Preston, morning to you, Wendy, says, I love to see men in a suit and tie in positions such as reading the news and politicians. If they want to dress down, only one button open at the top. You had Andrew Bridgen on the other week, who had no tie on and 2 buttons open. I could see the hairs on his chest. Sorry, Wendy.
I agree with you, Wendy. I think, yeah, I'm not terribly into chest hair coming out and making its presence felt.
Depends how much you've got.
I used to co-present with somebody who I will not name, but he had... some people are hirsute, aren't they?
Yes.
And he had chest hair that used to just come out over the top of his collar.
No.
Yeah. And at the cuffs.
Oh, I bet he didn't know.
I never saw him without his shirt on, but he must have been very...
He didn't need to wear a vest, did he?
No, he would have been quite warm.
In this weather. Wendy also always irons the bedding. Quite right, Wendy.
I'm sorry, I've really caused a kerfuffle here. I don't iron the bedding. I think life is too short to iron your bedding, but apparently I should.
Oh, yeah, I always
to keep up standards.
I always iron the bedding, or Shelley irons the bedding. Morning, Shelley.
Yeah, yes, good on you, Shelley.
Lady.
Yeah, Dave says, you see, this is something that's interesting. We've been talking about the Sue Gray Partygate report and why it appears to be being redacted or delayed, what's going on. Dave says perhaps there should be an inquiry into why the Met police officers inside Number 10 did nothing to stop the alleged gatherings and parties. And you can't help but wonder, and some of the press are speculating, whether or not Cressida Dick, head of the Met, is redacting or wanting certain things redacted to protect her own police people inside Number 10.
There are questions to be asked, as Peter Blakesley, who we talked to earlier on, former Met detective...
Conspiracy theories are just going to go mad, aren't they? The more they keep this report from us, the more there are going to be conspiracy theories,
sometimes
justifiable or not.
Do you know what? Sometimes you just have to be open and honest. And if you've done something wrong, hold your hands up.
That's what they always say, isn't it?
Well, honestly...
On the highway code, Jill's been saying...
Yes, Jill says all the new things they've brought in, there's 8 new rules, all regarding pedestrians and cyclists, and they're all pretty much what I do anyway. I always check before opening my door. These are things I was taught by my driving instructor more than 40 years ago. As per the other campaign, Think Bike, I do, sadly. A lot of bike riders don't.
It is something that should be built into all of the coaching you get when you do your driving lessons.
Yeah, but I'm not...
Common courtesy.
But this Dutch handle?
Dutch reach.
Dutch reach.
Yeah.
So you open the...
You're going, instead of opening the door like that...
You do it like
you don't
this.
have to look. You do it that way, which means you're turning to see what's coming.
But then if you pull the handle, how are you meant to push the door open?
Well, and if you suffer from sciatica, I don't know how you do it at all. But the idea is that you're actually forced into being able to see who might be running into you.
I do sort of think it's slightly crackers that you have to... It's not legislation, but almost sort of legislate about how you open a car door from the inside.
Well, I don't know. I know clunk, click, every tip. That was something that was law. But if you get a good enough slogan, you think about it before you do it, and maybe it would catch on.
I don't know if Dutch reach is going to be a catchy
no, it's not
term. It's not just me. It's not just me, is it?
So they used to call it boarding house reach. Do you remember boarding house reach?
No.
Boarding house reach was when you were staying at a boarding house and you had to reach over to get the salt or pepper, and you'd reach over somebody else. That was called the boarding house reach.
Oh.
There may be a better explanation of it than one I've just given, but it used to be a very well-known thing.
Did it?
Yeah.
I would never
Don't come at me with your boarding house reach.
Yeah, I'd never reach over anybody else.
No, but that's what it was
rude.
about. It was about reaching for the ketchup or the salt and pepper.
It's all about all these things are about manners and having respect for other people on the road and respect for people at a table. And all. I was just brought up that way.
Do we live nowadays too fast-paced life to even think of manners anymore?
Maybe.
Is it the pace of life that's doing it?
Maybe. I have slowed things down a bit.
Yeah. And I think that's important.
I quite like it.
Yeah, it's what my dad used to call declutter your life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not just physical decluttering, but in there as well, declutter.
That whole take your time and smell the flowers, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. The reason we're talking about all this is because the Highway Code is changing from today, with 8 new rules coming into effect. The new guidance will affect all road users, and that includes pedestrians, mobility scooter users, cyclists, motorcyclists, all vehicle drivers and horse riders.
Yeah, it all hopes to offer better protection to, particularly pedestrians and cyclists. Hundreds of whom are seriously injured or killed on the roads every year. Alice Porter has more now on what the rules could mean for you. Morning, Alice.
Morning, Alice.
The problem with all of this is, unless we go out and get a new copy of the Highway Code, it all seems a bit confusing at the moment.
Hi there, good morning. Absolutely. If you're waking up today thinking, I didn't know anything about these changes, you're not alone. The AEA did a poll recently which showed 1 in 3 motorists didn't know anything about it. But we're hoping to give a little bit of clarity today about what the changes are and what they mean for motorists or cyclists or indeed pedestrians. And I'm joined today by Duncan Donamore from UK Cycling. Thanks very much for joining me. Talk me through the changes, I guess, from a cycling perspective, what they are and what the sort of impact really is.
Well, the biggest change is probably a bit of a cultural change rather than one of the specific rules about a particular thing. It's the introduction of something called the hierarchy of users or hierarchy of responsibilities. And that's just simply enshrining in the code the principle that the person in charge of the largest vehicle, the one that has the most capacity to cause harm in the event of a collision, they have the greater responsibility. If you think about that, that's really just saying the driver of a 44-ton lorry has more responsibility than a 7-year-old on the pavement. It's not that the pedestrian has no responsibility for their own safety, but it's just confirming that if you're in charge of something which can cause harm to others, you have the greater responsibility. So a cyclist has more responsibility, for example, than a pedestrian. And that's something which we've never had in the code before, which affects all the other rules as well.
Absolutely. So that's quite a big change. And another change I wanted to ask you about was at junctions, this idea that drivers and also cyclists have to give way to pedestrians who are wanting to cross over at junctions. I was sort of wondering, well, does that mean that if anyone could just sort of cross over the road? Have you got any clarity on that?
Well, until yesterday, we had 14 different rules that covered this issue of who has priority, or who gives way to whom at junctions. And that's why 70%, 75% of collisions with cyclists took place at junctions. It's a similar figure in relation to pedestrians. So they are the most dangerous place on our roads. What we've done is followed the situation that most of Northern Europe has. We now have a single rule for junctions without traffic signals, which is if you're turning left, you give way to something going straight ahead. That means if you're driving and turning left in your car at an unsignalised junction, you give way to the pedestrian that's crossing the road or the cyclist in the cycle lane that you're cutting across. That's the principle behind it. And it impacts cyclists as well, because the cyclist turning left now has to give way to the pedestrian that's crossing the road. Best way to think about this is to imagine that huge bell-mouth forecourt entrance that you might have to a petrol station, where you've got sort of 40 metres to cross. Perhaps you're a mum with a pram and you're pushing it across, and somebody drives into that, and you have that moment where you wonder whether you're supposed to break into a trot and get out of the way of the driver. What this rule says is, no, you're crossing. The driver is supposed to give way to you to allow you to cross that junction.
OK, well, it seems like there's a lot in these changes that are going to improve life for cyclists. But there are, of course, a lot of motorists who may be watching this sort of saying, well, OK, it's all very well, I'm going to be giving way to cyclists if I want to turn left or right. OK, fine. But this issue about cyclists and cycle lanes, not having to use them, that's a lot of motorists will feel quite frustrated, particularly if they've got their taxes going into having, updated cycle lanes, but cyclists not having to use them. Some would say this code's not going far enough in protecting drivers in that capacity.
Well, the problem we've had over the last week or 10 days is there's been a lot of miscommunication about the code changes, and that's fostered a bit of division in relation to different user groups. It's worth bearing in mind that the vast majority of people who cycle have also got a driving licence and are drivers as well. Now, the reality is there is no change in relation to the issue of whether or not cyclists have to use a cycling facility if it exists. The reality is that almost every cyclist I know will use a cycle lane if it's there, if it's decent quality, if it's separated from traffic, if it's maintained. If it lasts for 20 metres, gets to a junction, and then starts again and lasts for 10 metres, like some that we've had that were not badly designed, then people don't use them. The code's not changed in relation to any of that. What we should have had, though, is a clearer communication to drivers that these were coming, because some of the rule changes were designed to explain why things happened, to explain to drivers, for instance, that sometimes a cyclist might be riding in the middle of the lane rather than hugging the curb on the left as they approach a junction. It wasn't telling the cyclist to do that, it was explaining to the driver why that might happen. But we haven't had the big public communication campaign, awareness campaign, that we should have had before these changes came in.
Well, Duncan, thank you very much for joining us today and giving, I hope, some explanation to any drivers, cyclists or pedestrians who are indeed watching this. As we were saying there has a lot of people have had concerns that there hasn't been quite the publicity. So, of course, do check it out online to see what the update of the rules are to make sure everyone is safe on our roads.
OK, Alice Porter, thank you very much indeed. I mean, a lot of it does seem to be common sense.
Common sense and courtesy. You wait till there are driverless cars on the road. There was a big piece in the papers this week about somebody is trying to figure out who bears the responsibility.
Oh, if there's an accident.
If you're in a driverless car that has an accident, it's driverless, so you're not driving it, so how can you be therefore liable?
But you
But
you can override everything. So, the sort of stipulation is meant to be, it might be sort of driving, but you're still meant to be paying attention.
Yeah, but some driverless cars aren't even going to have steering wheels or anything in which you could take over.
That's a whole different kettle of fish.
So I don't know how they're ever going to sort that out, but
no.
Maybe we're just all going to have to go slower, much slower. Except maybe on motorways where you would join some sort of long convoy.
Yeah, but I think we need to... Safety is so much better than it used to be in terms of cars. I think we should be going faster on motorways.
On motorways, maybe, especially if they are computer-driven.
Yes.
You edge onto the motorway and then you give over control of your car.
And it just joins like a train.
An eye in the sky. It's like a train. It's like a convoy. Yeah. And then you say, I want to get off at junction 15 or something. And at some point, you have to then retake control of the car.
Oh, that would be nice,
wouldn't it?
I mean,
it would be nice to still be around in 50 years' time or whatever and see how things progress, because the way we get around, public transport maybe as well, is going to look so very different.
50 years? I wonder if I'll still be here in 50 years.
I know I won't.
No. I probably won't be. Very much happy.
I always think how fascinating it would be to be able to just glimpse into the future.
That's why we need a
TARDIS. Oh, we do need a TARDIS.
That would be nice.
We'd have great fun in a TARDIS.
Oh, I'd love it. I'd love it.
Now, I want to ask you, this, I think, is such an important story that we should go into it tomorrow.
Okay.
Because you have a pussycat.
Yes, I'm a big cat lover.
And I've got a dog. And the question is, do you have a cat flap?
No.
So when your cat wants to go out...
So I have to let him in or out. But see, I quite like that because it gives you a sort of a relationship where if they want something, they have to ask you for it.
Yeah, OK. So, I can do it. But when he goes out, you don't know what he's up to. He's not in an enclosure or anything like that.
No.
Does he bring in little dead things that occasionally he has to go at?
Not very often. He has a go. He has a go. I found him... He did catch a bird the other day, but it was fine. It was a bit stunned, but it was fine, so it flew off. So he does. He's had the odd mouse, and he's not a big hunter. Some cats are real hunters.
But don't you put that down to the fact that he's a cat?
He's a cat.
And he should be able to do that.
Yeah, he should be.
Well, PETA, the animal rights charity, are saying now that we should not have cat flaps anymore because it means our cats go out and kill things. And not only do they go out and kill things, but they also go out, they wander off, and they are therefore prey to other things as well, like catnapping or being poisoned or things like that. I mean, there are some pretty horrible ways.
So what should they do? Keep them in the house?
Yes, they're saying cats should be indoor animals.
No. How's that fair on a cat? They love being out.
That's what I would say. They say people wouldn't dream of opening the door and letting a toddler wander into the road, yet every day cats are run over, poisoned by antifreeze or die at the hands of teenagers out for a lark just because their guardians let them out. If you love your cat, you should keep them indoors and make your house their home with views to enjoy and things to play with.
No, that is nonsense.
They are saying cats should now be pets that you keep indoors. And it's up to you, if you want to own a cat, to make their environment indoors an exciting one for them.
Totally disagree.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a cat flap, but it's for my dog.
The dog.
But she doesn't go out and wander off beyond the garden, obviously.
No.
And what Peter is saying is that it's not only good for your cat, because it safeguards them, but if you bring up your cat to be an indoor animal, that's the way you should go.
But they're not meant to be indoor animals. That's the whole point with cats. I mean, they are sort of semi-wild. They want to go out hunting. They're hunters.
Yeah, and actually the other thing as well is that there are reports out saying that our cats are becoming obese because we're keeping them indoors.
Yeah.
And maybe overfeeding them, or at least they're not allowed to run free. So maybe that would be an enormous bad thing to do.
I don't know. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us @gbnews, and we'll look at it tomorrow.
230,000 cats were run over on UK roads last year. See, that's what Peter is saying, is that letting your cat go free is probably the right thing to do for a cat, because it is an animal, but the risk is they'll be run over.
It's a tough one. Let us know what you think. We'll go into it in more detail tomorrow.
A cat, an indoor animal.
Include cat pictures, if you would.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, let's go mad on cat pictures.
Yes, please. I would love that. In the meantime, let's get you up to date with the main stories today. And tensions continue to rise between Russia and Ukraine as the PM is set to visit the region in the coming days. Boris Johnson says he's determined to accelerate diplomatic efforts and will speak to President Putin on the phone. He's set to consider a range of options to alleviate Russian aggression, including new military deployments and bolstering NATO defences.
2 people have been arrested following a stabbing of a teenage boy in Norwich yesterday evening. The teen was pronounced dead at the scene. Police say a man in his 40s and a woman in her 30s were arrested shortly afterwards.
A major overhaul of the highway code, as we've been talking about today, comes into force with concerns that millions of us just aren't aware of what's going on. The new rules aim to boost protection for cyclists and pedestrians.
And then something else we've been talking about such a lot, nearly a quarter of older people say they'll be forced to choose between heating their home or buying food if bills continue to rise. That's according to the latest research by the charity Age UK. And they also say that more than half of over 65s say they'll have to heat their homes less as inflation and the cost of living soars.
Loads of people getting in touch about that one this morning. There's some concern about long COVID. A pilot study by scientists at Oxford University have used special gas to identify lung abnormalities which aren't picked up by routine scans. More detailed study is underway to confirm the results and better understand how to treat the issue.
And Storm Malik, we're going to talk about this in a few minutes. It's set to batter Britain with winds of up to 80 miles an hour expected in some areas. Amber weather warnings are now in place across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, with the Met Office warning that the storm could cause damage to homes, power lines and transport.
So we'll bring you more about Storm Malik in just a couple of minutes, but first let's take you through the forecast.
Hello, good morning. Some very stormy weather across northern parts of the country this morning. Some very windy weather to come through the day today. An area of rain pushing southwards, but it will turn a little bit brighter later on. Now we've got this cold front, some very tightly packed isobars, and it's this that's bringing some very strong winds across northern parts of the UK through the day on Saturday. Stay tuned to the latest forecast. Through this morning we'll have widely gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps 70, possibly 80 miles an hour. The Met Office have issued an amber wind warning for northeastern parts of Scotland, where we could see some really damaging weather through the course of the day today. Now skies will brighten through the day as this cold front slides southwards, some sunny spells and a few showers feeding through, but very blustery throughout the afternoon, so certainly not feeling like 10 to 12 degrees on the thermometer. Even further south it will be milder, but there will be more of a breeze than we've been used to of late. Now the worst of the winds will continue at first through Saturday evening before easing away, and then we have a ridge of high pressure building in, so what that means is the skies will clear. We'll see those winds easing right down, and that'll allow temperatures to take a bit of a tumble. So a cold start to the day on Saturday, quite a widespread frost, some pockets of ice out there as well. Temperatures in our rural spots will dip close to, if not a little bit below freezing. But a really different start to the day on Sunday. Plenty of sunshine out there first thing. Sunshine getting to work on that frost. But through the day we will see the skies turn hazier across the north and west as that cloud starts to filter in. So a fine day for much of England and Wales. but a much wetter and windier picture for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland. The risk of some hill snow here as well. And later, as this area of low pressure feeds in, we will see some very strong winds starting to develop once again. So the Met Office have issued further warnings for Sunday's weather. As we take a look through the week, it stays fairly up and down. Those temperatures a little bit up and down too, perhaps a bit milder by Tuesday. Goodbye.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Morning, 9:23. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. If you're watching at home, peering out of the windows, are you out and about listening to us on the radio, in the car this morning, looking at the gloomy skies out there? Well, I presume they're gloomy.
Yeah, I presume they're gloomy because you probably heard us talking about how Storm Malik is coming, and we're being warned to brace for its arrival because it's going to be very windy.
Oh, yeah, 80 miles an hour they're talking about, particularly in northern areas of the UK this weekend. Let's talk to weatherman John Ketley. Morning to you, John.
Hello, John.
I mean, what can we expect?
Morning, Stephen. Yeah, well, it is revving up at the moment, this storm Malik. It's not a UK storm. It's been named by Scandinavia, I believe. Because it's going to be sweeping across into Scandinavia through today, and that's where it's going to be particularly bad as well. So some pretty stormy weather for northern parts of the UK, as you've just intimated. In the south, it's just a blustery old winter's day, really. It's nothing too much. And indeed, there is some sunshine around. I'm sorry to spoil your script, but there is some sunshine around this morning, and many places will stay dry. But there are these squally showers feeding in across Scotland right now. Gusts of up to 80 miles an hour, as you've just heard. And those fierce winds are going to be blowing across Scotland into the North Sea in the next 12 hours. So things will slowly ease later on today, and a much calmer, frostier night to follow as well.
So it's not one of these absolutely beast from the east type storms?
No, not yet. No, there's still time for that to come, Anne. At the moment, it's just a winter storm which is coming and going very, very quickly. But there's another one hard on its heels. I've mentioned the fact that it's going to get cold and frosty tonight. It certainly will. There'll be a widespread frost, really, as the winds drop right down. But then during Sunday, there's another one developing out to the northwest, and that is going to be, if anything, probably more widespread. And that'll bring some gales, even severe gales, across much of the country during the latter part of Sunday and into Sunday night and Monday morning. Just for a while. Again, it's a quick storm, but it is going to be very noteworthy. It will be damaging. It will bring travel disruption. There's no doubt about that, travel disruption with that next storm coming through. And some quite heavy rain just for a while. But it's the fact that it could, loosen tiles and bring some branches off the trees. This one today certainly will do in the northeast. But the next one could as well, because it's quite an intense little storm blowing across the whole country, really. So it's more widespread, the one coming in later on Sunday.
Oh, right. So we've got a right miserable sort of 24, 48 hours ahead of us then. I know you say bits of sunshine and things about, John, which I suppose is nice if you like sort of cold, frosty days. But...
Yeah, better to stay indoors. But if you can't afford
look at me.
I'm just fed up
my
being
jumper
cold,
off.
John, to be honest.
Nothing unusual there,
Yeah,
John. Don't you think maybe just we feel it's more dramatic because we're giving these storms names now?
Yeah, well, I think they've got more impact. There's no doubt about that. I think this sort of thing changed. We started naming these storms more in anger about 2014-ish, I think, from memory. I'm not sure exactly. But the Americans have been doing it for donkey's years, absolutely decades, since the 50s, something like that. And I think they do have an impact. The media can certainly latch onto them much more quickly. And generally speaking, even after the event, in retrospect, I think people will remember a storm because of its name. I mean, it's not that long ago, is it? We had Storm Arwen up in the northeast of Scotland, which brought that terrible weather and power cuts, which lasted for well over a week for some poor folk. So that was Storm Arwen. We're always talking about that one still because it was quite noteworthy. I might just mention something else. I don't know how long you've got, but, it could be here for a while. There's another batch of very bad weather on the other side of the Atlantic. We're inextricably linked on this jet stream. We talk about the jet stream ad nausea because it sweeps across from North America, across the Atlantic into Europe, and we're all linked with it. It does change its position, changes its intensity as it comes along. But at the moment, we've got eyes on some heavy snow over the northeastern parts of the states, and also the one that interested me this morning, some very, very cold air sweeping into Florida, unusually cold air, widespread frost there. And apparently the locals are worried about all the iguanas. They could be suffering with the problem with iguanas down in Florida because it is going to be so cold. I'm not suggesting that sort of cold weather is going to be coming across here all the time, but it does intensify the jet stream when you've got the very cold air in one place and much milder air up in the north in some parts, not everywhere, but... it's the fluctuation, the variation, the contrast in temperature really across this jet stream that brings these more severe storms coming through to here.
That's interesting because, half term is coming up and I'll bet you quite a lot of families are thinking of going to Florida or have booked to take the kids to Florida or something, and it's going to be unusually cold.
It is in the short term, yes. I don't think it's going to last too long. It doesn't tend to in the southern states. But it's actually been pretty cold over in Texas as well over the past week or so. It's supposed to be the dry season over in Texas. And last year it was a dry season. January, I think we saw one day of rain. But this January, it's been really quite wet and cold at times as well. And although it's heating up at the moment in Texas, there is some just short bursts of colder weather coming back.
Years and years to when you were a student studying this sort of thing. Do you feel that the weather is different? Is it more dramatic? Is it more changeable? Or 'twas ever thus?
Well, to me, it's 'twas ever thus. That's the line I would take. I think there feels to be a shift in seasons. People following nature will always say that things are arriving more quickly in the spring. I'm not sure about that. To me, spring is actually going later into the winter is going further back into February, March, and the spring is starting a bit later in my book. I've got no figures to prove that, but people following the birds migrating will say the other way. But that's the way it seems to me from a meteorological point of view, that we seem to be dragging the cold weather through to a greater part of spring and then a slow start to summer. But eventually we do get a heat wave, don't we? But nothing's forever. We don't get very lengthy periods of a certain type of weather. It's just 'twas ever thus, as you say, Anne.
Yeah, it does change.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
John, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Want it to get hotter.
Yeah.
Frankly, I'm fed up of being cold. I'm fed up of having to put my big coat on every time I go out.
Oh, absolutely, and now having to think of Jim Jams and your dressing gown, just wandering around the house. But I used to take the children to Disney sometimes at Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
And it was always lovely and quite mild, even at Christmas. But the idea of Florida getting snow.
See, it's just you saying about Jim Jams. You were saying earlier on what you're going to do this afternoon.
Yeah.
And actually, I think Jim Jams and dressing gown.
A duvet day.
Oh, that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. That's what we look forward to.
There you go. It's probably more insight into what I'm going to be doing today than you need, but there you go.
It's glamorous, isn't it?
It's a very glamorous, showbizy life I lead. Still to come for you this morning, though. We've got more on that Sue Gray report, as well as a look at all the weekend's sport and showbiz. Stay with us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Cut us up on camera 6. Can you do that? I don't know if they can do it quick. No, that's the wrong one. That's you. No, that one. That's the one. That's the one. It's just they're counting back to us coming back on about 3 seconds to go, and it was raucous in here because you're chatting away to Aidan, I'm chatting away to Stephanie,
and then we all go.
Yeah, it's great. It's chaos here sometimes, but
most of the time.
We love it. We have got, as you can tell, all your sport and showbiz heading away in just a moment here on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne at 9:34. Let's take you through the top story.
The much-anticipated Sue Gray report is due imminently, but some facts about the parties at Downing Street might be redacted from the final report.
Yeah, on Friday, the Met Police released a statement stating that certain details could be omitted from the report to stop possible prejudicing the current police investigations. The police, however, are delaying the actual release of the report.
We're joined now by lawyer Chris Daw, QC. A very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
What do you think is behind this delaying tactic, possible prejudicing a police investigation? What do you think's behind it, truly?
Well, I think the police have really made a catastrophic mistake by becoming involved in any of this. If you remember, towards the end of last year, when this issue first arose, the police said, well, we have a policy, we don't investigate breaches of COVID regulations from months or years ago. That's just not what we do. It's disproportionate. We haven't got the time. That was a very wise decision. And then, unfortunately, the police decided differently and said, well, we will have a look at some of this evidence, but we won't delay any publication of the report. And then we get a third position now, which is that the police are asking the government to redact or withdraw information, which is really at the heart of the whole issue. In other words, all of the detail of when the parties were, who attended, and so on. If that information is stripped out of whatever is released in the next few days, I think there's going to be uproar, and rightly so. The police have got themselves right in the middle of what is truthfully not a legal issue, but a political issue. And Sue Gray should simply be permitted to publish everything that she's found and let the British people decide what they make of it.
But, I mean, to be fair, the police are in a bit of between a rock and a hard place, aren't they? As you say, they may have said they weren't going to retrospectively look at it, but with the details coming out in Sue Gray's report, there would then be very serious questions, wouldn't there, as to if the implication was that the rules and regs had been broken by Number 10, there'd be very serious questions as to why the police hadn't got involved and why fines hadn't been levied.
Well, the problem with that analysis for me is that when you think about it, they have got an elite investigation unit at Scotland Yard, which deals with international corruption and all manner of very high-level criminal offending. And that team is now being diverted to investigate breaches of regulations. They're not even crimes. I mean, this keeps being described as a criminal investigation. It's not even a criminal investigation. It's an investigation of breaches of regulations, which, as you say, can only result in a £200 fine. So I think, frankly, the public are more interested in the facts than whether anybody's given a £200 penalty notice or not. What people want is to understand who held the parties, who was responsible for organising them, and which members of the government were aware of it. And if Boris Johnson was not only aware of it, but partying with staff and colleagues, the public are entitled to know that now, not at the end of a months and months long police investigation, which in the end is not going to achieve anything from a legal point of view. So I just think that this is a godsend to Boris Johnson. I mean, there's nothing the government wanted more than to have the police seeking to restrict what could be commented upon and published. And, the truth of it is, Sue Gray is an extremely experienced and very senior civil servant who has herself been involved in questions of redaction over the years and what can and can't enter the public domain. So she well knows that the police have absolutely no power to restrict her from publishing, and she will, I am sure, make, I hope, a robust, independent judgment about what she needs to do next.
So do you fully expect her to go ahead and publish anyway next week?
I think she should. I think that would be the right thing to do. Whether in the end, on balance, she's frightened by possible criticism of going against police wishes, who knows? But I think the information that's in the public domain is that she is adamant that she wants to act with integrity, independently of government and ministers, and to get the information that she's found out there into the public domain, not just for the members of the public, voters like us to make what we make of it, but for Conservative MPs and Parliament to properly scrutinise what the government's been doing in our name. And let's not forget, this was Boris Johnson staring down the lens of that camera in those briefing sessions within hours of parties taking place under his own roof or outside in his own garden, telling the rest of us we couldn't get together at all in any social situation. So if that level of blazing hypocrisy has in fact taken place at the heart of our government, then absolutely Sue Gray must, I think, as a matter of principle, make sure that that information is out there in the public domain as soon as possible and in full.
Yeah, OK. Crystal QC, really good to talk to you.
Yes, thank you so much for explaining it so succinctly. It takes a lawyer's brain,
it does to break it down sometimes, especially as he's saying. It's, really the police, his view, shouldn't be involved at all in this because it's, it's
I'm just trying to find it. Somewhere it said in one of the reports today that the police investigation is costing something like £1.5 million.
See, that's ridiculous.
To what, recover a few hundred quid?
That can't be right. That can't be right. Anyway, let us know what you think. Love to hear your thoughts on it all. In the meantime, sticking with some politics, but school absences due to COVID are still high after the UK lifted Plan B measures this week. 1 in 8 pupils were off school on the 20th of January. A quarter of schools had 15% of their teachers and leaders off work.
And earlier we spoke to the Shadow Minister for Education and Schools, Stephen Morgan, about this effect on school children.
I want to see schools remain open because I think that's the best place for children to learn and play. But these latest figures are a worry, both in terms of pupil absences, but also teachers that are off. And I think that's partly because the government's plan is not working for schools. We've been calling for better measures around ventilation, on vaccination and testing. And I fear that the government have sort of left children as an afterthought in this pandemic. And that's why we need to see action taken. On ventilation, for example, the SAGE committee warned 20 months ago that ventilation would be an issue in schools, and what the government have proposed will just benefit 1 in 4 schools. The Bradford pilot, where they're looking at how this will work out, won't report till October of this year, and that's just not good enough, and that's why I'm going to continue to raise these issues in Parliament. Well, we've got to obviously look at the data and see what happens next, but I am really concerned by absence data. The government have not got a proper plan to support children, and that's why we've been calling in Parliament for action around ventilation, testing, and also ventilation. On testing, we know that that's the way out of the pandemic, and we've got to make sure supplies get to schools as quickly as possible. But it is a concern, and we need to make sure children are in school and learning together.
Yeah, interesting. We just tried to place where he was sitting.
I know.
It's a very odd
Unfortunately, we spoke to him earlier and the link went down, so we couldn't ask him where he was. I think it looks like, because he's schools minister, I think he's in a school art room.
Maybe.
But
or a large bathroom.
A large bathroom it could have been, because there did look like a loo roll behind him as well. So we're trying to figure out where he was. We just have to ring him up and ask him now.
Yes, yeah, we should do. Now, we've got all the sport and showbiz heading your way. Let's kick off with the showbiz. And Miss Stephanie Tecci, good morning, good morning. Looking fabulous as ever.
You, Stephen.
You always make a statement when you come in. I love it.
You put a little skip in my step, Stephen.
Oh, I try. Sort of like a Minnie Mouse skip.
Yeah, Minnie Mouse has gone woke. So she's had a fashion makeover and a woke makeover. So this week, Disney released images of Minnie Mouse not in her traditional red polka dot dress. Instead, she's all suited up in a very dark blue suit, which has been designed by Stella McCartney, and she insists it's sustainable as well.
How is it sustainable?
I don't know. I don't know if the characters we're going to see in Disneyland Paris now are going to be wearing sustainable Minnie Mouse outfits. But it's been met with mixed reactions. It's only temporary, thank God. Because, yeah, it is seriously temporary. I cannot have Minnie looking like this on a permanent basis, but they're doing it to mark the 30th anniversary of Disneyland Paris and also to mark International Women's Month. It's a good idea in theory, but then I think it takes away the femininity of Minnie Mouse, the one that we know and love very much. But this is just among the woke things Disney has been doing over the last 2 years, which has been including, like, putting trigger warnings on, like, old school films, saying that this could be offensive to certain cultures. This week alone, they've rehashed the Snow White and Dwarves live remake that they were going to do. They're saying they're not going to be using the dwarf characters that they wanted to do, and this was all...
I wonder what they're going to replace them with.
I don't know. I just think this is one story where actually you can feature dwarves, so I'm not sure what they're trying to achieve.
And there are a great many very famous dwarves who sort of, come out at particularly pantomime season and embrace their roles. Yeah. They're saying, hang on a minute, you're doing us out of a job.
Role, yeah.
It's not offensive, and I think Disney, any slight criticisms Disney gets, is like they quickly want to move to action and say, we're going to drop it. And I think Disney needs to stand by their guns by anything they say that they want to do.
I just wonder why they're promoting Women's Month or whatever with a mouse rather than a woman.
That's it.
Well, there you go. No.
She's still got that silly bow in her hair between her ears.
Yeah, she has. That's one thing they didn't get rid of. I think that would have...
Which they could have.
I know.
Well, they could have done. Now, what about Joanna Lumley?
Yeah, she's not someone who usually makes controversial remarks. But in an interview with GB's Isabel Oakeshott on her podcast, she said that she feels like a lot of people are just jumping on the mental health bandwagon, and people are just saying that they've got mental health problems. And she said, no, actually, sometimes it's just normal human emotions that you're experiencing, like grief. And she said people need to get a grip, because there's actually people who are really suffering from, like, clinical depression, and everyone's just going around saying, I've got mental health issues. So obviously this has been met with a lot of mixed reactions, because I guess the profile for what people say is, mental health, could be considered as mental health, is different for individuals.
Yeah, and whereas I can understand the point she's making, absolutely. I don't know if saying get a grip is helpful.
Well, she's only saying it to some.
Yeah.
She's not saying it to everybody, but...
No.
And it's a very difficult one, because she says, for instance, if you are consumed by grief, if you've lost a loved one, then it's natural to feel grief. But some people handle grief well, and some people it takes over their lives and destroys the rest of their life. So there is a mental health problem there. It's a difficult one. Maybe she feels now she's a dame, she can be even more outspoken.
Yeah, because she hasn't said such comments before. And it's, there's certain subjects now, we all know, that will get people's back up. And over the past few years, we've been encouraged to speak openly about mental health now. So I think the lines have become blurred between what is actual, being clinically depressed and just going through something which could be a bad...
Well, and we've all been through the pandemic. And again, some people have suffered very badly mentally because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So. It's a difficult one. And she's got herself into a controversy there.
But one thing is, she will never be cancelled. We can't cancel Jane.
No.
Lumley over this.
No,
I think that's why people are made dames, so they can speak their
Say
mind.
what they want.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll have to aim for that then.
Have you seen The Queen's Gambit on Netflix?
No, my other half did and said it was very good.
Oh, it's
very good.
Such a good series, but it's coming under fire in the States because it's now facing a defamation lawsuit from a chess player, Nuna Defgrafagilishi.
That sounds good to me.
It's something that was said in the drama about a real-life Russian chess player.
Yes,
is that right?
Yes, it's correct. So basically, they said that this player had never faced men when she played chess, and she had. So now she's suing them for millions of pounds to saying that it's defamed her career. And Netflix's argument is like, well, unless someone had intense knowledge of 60s Soviet Union chess, they haven't done anything wrong. But they lost their appeal in courts, yes.
Oh, I just think it's... I don't
It's
know
a drama, and a character in the drama said it.
No, definitely not. And to be honest, I'm surprised that they lost the appeal, because they have a really good argument in that sense where, you know, it's a fictional drama.
Exactly. It's a character in the drama who said it. Yeah. It's not them saying it like it's a documentary.
No, if it was like a real-life series on this player, then I would understand.
But do we believe what we say? I mean, like, people sort of believe what's in The Crown, don't they, as though it's like a documentary?
Well, they shouldn't.
Well, they shouldn't, but they do.
The lines get blurred sometimes.
They do. We hadn't heard of Paul Drayton up until recently, have we? But Alan Carr's husband, soon to be former, I mean, he's been in prison, now he's out again.
After 2 days. You know, there's this big discussion that we've previously had about, you know, celebrities being held accountable for their actions. So he was charged last year for being over 5 times over the drink limit, and he backed into a police car. And he was found guilty, and he was supposed to do 14 weeks. He was sentenced to 14 weeks in prison, and he was released after 2 days. And he said it was a very harrowing experience. But the judges said he's given him an opportunity to turn his life around, but he did put lives at risk during this case.
I sort of think, what, 14 weeks, of which he'd only served 7?
Yep.
He won an appeal against the ruling, and
after 48 hours, he gets released.
And Katie Price didn't go to prison.
No, she didn't at all. And it
we
just
were talking about her last weekend.
It makes you think that if it was just a normal citizen, more than likely they would do 7 weeks at least. But the fact that he's been
Or is it the fact that if you've got enough money, you can pay a lawyer to make a really good argument on your behalf?
It. And it seems like money can buy you freedom, but it's not the same for everybody.
No.
Buy you a good lawyer.
Yeah, it can, but maybe prison isn't necessarily the answer, is it? Maybe it's been enough of a shock to the system to straighten himself out.
Definitely, and you know what? I think these people do learn from their mistakes, and also when it is a celebrity in such situations, people can learn from such cases. You know, like this is potentially what could happen. He's lucky he's been able to appeal it, but not other people will be so lucky.
No, that's the issue with it all, I think. But you know, let's just hope he sorts himself out.
Well, there's lots of good sport as well as showbiz this weekend, isn't there, Aidan?
There is indeed, yeah, lots of stuff.
Do we kick off with the tennis, or do you want to talk football first?
Well, let's doff our cap to the tennis, because I believe Ash Barty's taken the first set in the Australian Open final. It's going with serve last I saw in the second set, although I'm not in tune with what's going on in the last few minutes, so it may have changed. But yeah, football-wise, big stories this week. Obviously, it looks like Everton are going to go for Frank Lampard. He's had his second interview. There were other runners and riders as well. Wayne Rooney pulled away from it. He believes he's got a big job to do at Derby County, which is suffering particular strife of its own. Duncan Ferguson's caretaker charge at the moment, big hero with the supporters over the last 25 years. He's staking his claim at the moment, but I suppose what's hindering him is the fact that they're not playing until next week. A caretaker really advances their claim to the job when there's games going on. If there's no games going on, there's really not really much you can
What's
do.
Frank Lampard been doing up till now?
He's had a year's hiatus because he had 18 months at Chelsea. Chelsea was the dream job. He'd come from Derby, where he'd done a decent job getting into the playoffs. He didn't go up, unfortunately, and that's kind of led to the problems they're having today in some ways, but that's by the by for now. He went to Chelsea, 18 months. He was working under a transfer embargo, so he wasn't able to sign players until right near the end of it, or probably the last third of his reign. But to be fair, those two signings didn't really come off. Timo Werner and Kai Havertz. Sorry, they didn't really, tear the thing up until later on in their career after Lampard left. What didn't help him was that the guy who came in at Chelsea this time last year, Thomas Tuchel, immediately landed the Champions League. They also got to the FA Cup final. So on reflection, it made the job that Lampard do look a little bit unremarkable. But he's going to be back in football. The supporters at Everton seem to want him there. There have been angry protests.
Job.
Oh, it's a huge job. It's a really big club. They've had problems in terms of spending because of these financial fair play rules, which means you can't spend more than you take through coming the other way. Right. But they've cleared some of the decks in terms of wages. So they've got half a chance of allowing Lampard to sign a few players.
He'd be quite a popular signing, would he?
I think so, yeah.
He's a pretty glamorous figure, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I mean, yeah, you see him swanning around Chelsea quite often. You know, he has been. But I suppose he's got a long association with the club, hasn't he? So
I sort of feel obliged to talk QPR, Aidan, because last week you very, very nicely on Twitter put on your QPR top, put it online.
I may have mentioned that I've got a column in the Matchday programme.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
So I'm going to read a paragraph because I thought I'll give you a mention.
Oh, go on.
Okay, here we go. So this is my column I write in the Matchday programme every home game. Okay, we played on Tuesday night against Swansea, 0-0 draw. I've been supporting this team for 36 years. Okay, QPR made the brief chat about football shirts during Anne and Stephen's Sunday morning breakfast show, the latter even challenging me to post a picture of myself in a QPR top on Twitter. As you can see, that's exactly what I did. You can't really see it in that picture, but it's a picture of me in the famous...
It's a classic top.
Let me show it to everybody.
Okay.
Put it up
It's a nice sort of classic, classic top.
Exactly.
Lovely. Thank you for the...
McGee. I like the fact that your sort of column is called McGee.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
McGee.
It's hard hitting, but we've got a game this afternoon. They're our local club. They're 10 minutes away in an Uber. So I'm going there, hospitality from 12:30.
Oh, how nice.
So it'll be nice. I've seen the menu as well. There's pork tarragon on the menu. So.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, that's not so bad. You mentioned Derby and their problems. I mean, financially, they're in a whole host of trouble, aren't they?
Yeah, huge problems. I mean, £60 million in debt for a championship club. They possibly overspent a little bit on wages when Frank Lampard was there a couple of years ago. It's been mismanaged. The pandemic hasn't helped, but then HMRC, who are one of the creditors, they owed £30 million of that 60. They've actually reined things in a bit and said there were going to be no winding up orders against any of these clubs while they weren't getting any matchday revenue, because obviously Pride Park, their stadium, was closed for the best part of 18 months. So they're in deep trouble, and they're already carrying a 21-point deduction. Wayne Rooney has done an excellent job, you have to say. He's put them within striking distance of safety. If he achieves that, and there's a bit to do, with their 8 points from safety, still quite a few games to go this season. If he does that, I would rank that as one of the best achievements in football in recent times. Up there, possibly, with Leicester winning the league. I think I probably mentioned that last week. Yeah. But, yeah, for now, they're looking for... There's no preferred bidder at the moment. Nobody seems to be stepping forward. Now, if you've got any sense from a business point of view, you're probably going to hold back until the conditions are so advantageous that you're going to attract a bid. Mike Ashley, recently of Newcastle, sports directs everything else. He's rumoured to be interested in taking the club. He's got a big factory nearby in Derbyshire, the one that was the subject of the parliamentary inquiry about 3 or 4 years ago when they were supposedly treating workers not too well. So he's got a connection with Derbyshire. I think he likes to look at this club. This is a real football club. This is a club who have spent 1 year in the Premier League in the last 20 years, and yet they're still in the bottom half of the Championship, sometimes even lower, pulling in 26,000, 28,000 crowds. That's extraordinary. There are not many clubs who can boast of those kind of numbers. So they will be ripe for a takeover at some point. I cannot believe they're just going to float into non-existence.
No.
I don't think that's going to happen. And if it did, that would be a shame on the game.
OK, enough football. Got to talk tennis again because it's the final of the Australian Open this time tomorrow, really.
Yeah, the men's, exactly. I mean, Rafa Nadal, great story. I mean, we were talking earlier, weren't we, about how all the narrative was about can Djokovic win Grand Slam title number 21 to put him ahead of Federer, Nadal. Federer wasn't being talked about, obviously, because he's injured and not playing. Nadal was in it, but not being talked about because he spent the last year with a foot injury. And there he is, one match tomorrow, away from hitting the number 21.
I know, yeah. Wonderful.
You know, I don't subscribe.
I hope he does it, but the guy he's playing, Medvedev...
Daniel Medvedev, don't rule him out.
No,
US Open
and he's
champion,
also a very popular figure.
Absolutely. US Open champion, no less. Improving a lot in the last couple of years. He won his most recent meeting with Nadal. He had a big 4-set win over Stefanos Tsitsipas in the semi-final. I sometimes think that when you play a high-octane game like that takes it out of you, you can look at the fatigue factor, but sometimes the adrenaline and everything, the buzz that goes with beating a high-level opponent is probably better preparation for a final than effectively not a walkover, but a very one-sided semi-final that Nadal had to go through.
My money's on Nadal. Who are you going for?
I think Nadal can do it. I think this means a lot to him, so I think his passion will get through.
Yeah, I think so, Nadal.
Because I like Spanish. What were we saying last? I've been told something about buttons on shirts.
Oh yes, you'd only have one button undone,
right?
And
if you're
wear
not
a tie.
Only one button.
I'll do it up then. Okay.
I like to see presenters wearing ties. Some ties are beautiful, says Jill. So Jill says, put a tie on. But
no, you're all right. No, you're all right. It's wearing the woolly waistcoat again.
Good to see you both this morning.
Thank you, guys.
Stay with us because Esther and Philip are here next with the Saturday selection.
Thanks for joining us. Bye.
Hello, good morning. Some very stormy weather across northern parts of the country this morning. Some very windy weather to come through the day today. An area of rain pushing southwards, but it will turn a little bit brighter later on. Now we've got this cold front, some very tightly packed isobars, and it's this that's bringing some very strong winds across northern parts of the UK through the day on Saturday. Stay tuned to the latest forecast. Through this morning we'll have widely gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour, perhaps 70, possibly 80 miles an hour. The Met Office have issued an amber wind warning for northeastern parts of Scotland where we could see some really damaging weather through the course of the day today. Now skies will brighten through the day as this cold front slides southwards, some sunny spells and a few showers feeding through, but very blustery throughout the afternoon, so certainly not feeling like 10 to 12 degrees on the thermometer. Even further south it will be milder, but there will be more of a breeze than we've been used to of late. Now, the worst of the winds will continue at first through Saturday evening before easing away. And then we have a ridge of high pressure building in. So what that means is the skies will clear. We'll see those winds easing right down, and that'll allow temperatures to take a bit of a tumble. So a cold start to the day on Saturday, quite a widespread frost, some pockets of ice out there as well. Temperatures in our rural spots will dip close to, if not a little bit below freezing. But a really different start to the day on Sunday. Plenty of sunshine out there first thing. Sunshine getting to work on that frost. But through the day, we will see the skies turn hazier across the north and west as that cloud starts to filter in. So a fine day for much of England and Wales, but a much wetter and windier picture for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland. The risk of some hill snow here as well. And later, as this area of low pressure feeds in, we will see some very strong winds starting to develop once again. So the Met Office have issued further warnings for Sunday's weather. As we take a look through the week, it stays fairly up and down. Those temperatures a little bit up and down